Hi, I'm Wade Keller, editor of Pro Wrestling Torch Weekly Newsletter and pwtorch.com, in conjunction with Big Vision Entertainment. This is the Ultimate Insider Series, and we are with Matt Hardy. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
Now, you were known as Jeff Hardy's brother for quite a bit of your career. It kind of grew to be that way, where Jeff Hardy's this flashy guy, and you, as he began to lose interest in wrestling, or wasn't as sure that that's what he wanted to dedicate his life to, you at the same time were gaining this confidence. This is what you wanted to do, and you wanted your own identity. You didn't want to be one of the two Hardy boys or Jeff Hardy's brother, just like he was known as Matt Hardy's brother. You wanted your own identity. What steps did you have to take to differentiate yourself from the image that you had established as a tag team?
First off, it's a very good question that you bring up, but there's something I want to add that I think people miss a lot.
Yeah.
Even in that, I think you missed as well. You said that I wanted to create this identity or become an identity on my own. One thing about Jeff was I think he kind of peaked as how he was as a performer, and then once he started becoming burnt out, then he started declining as a performer. But the thing with me was, even if you look back at my earlier matches, like, I was pretty good and pretty solid, but the whole while I was always busting my ass to improve every aspect of me all over. And a lot of people didn't even notice that still, when Jeff became, the standout, so to say.
Yeah.
From a physical standpoint, from even the way my body looked, to my performance in the ring, even to speaking, which I didn't get that opportunity as much.
Yeah.
But, there was a big thing there that a lot of people didn't realize it until, I did break out on my own, that, I had improved a lot, but a lot of people just didn't notice it.
Yeah.
It was just like that stigma that was put on Jeff as far as being, the standout because he got more opportunities. And once again, like I said, I think if Vince McMahon or people from the creative team really get that burnt in their head that Jeff is the guy, it's really hard to break that idea.
Yeah.
Until I'm just given an opportunity to do some good stuff, and they go, "Whoa, he actually can do stuff. He can perform." So my whole goal was I always knew I felt very confident. I didn't have the flash that Jeff had. Even he's just such an oddball and just such a likable person. And once again, my strengths as a character, my strengths from a personality standpoint are very different, and I didn't have a chance to really show that to everyone. And I just knew if I had an opportunity, I was very confident between my personality being strong in the way I would express it, and also my skills in the ring as far as being able to do my thing in my way. Jeff Hardy was a representative of the Hardy Boys because he fit more to the style that we represented, where I didn't. But I knew once I got all on my own, I was doing something on my own, that I would be fine myself and kind of go in my own direction.
And what was the first thing that stands out in your mind as a singles wrestler that said, this is who I am and this is who I become, this is who I've matured into without Jeff by your side?
Honestly, I'll tell you, going back, it's very odd that I would say this, but when I'd gotten to the best shape I felt like I'd ever been at that point in my life, and I really felt like I was strong as a performer in ring-wise from an athletic standpoint, because I knew that Jeff was getting ready to take a leave of absence from TV, and I was getting ready to have an opportunity on my own. So I was very, very motivated because I knew this was going to be my chance to shine if I was going to get one.
Yeah.
So during this time, and we've been over this before already, is where Jeff ended up being forced to stay on TV because Stone Cold had left, and he did this thing with The Undertaker where he was making, where he's making this name for himself, and the WWE brass were really behind him. And I was on Heat every week, but I had a series of matches on Heat, 5 or 6 weeks back to back. Actually, Stevie Richards, I wrestled him 3 times.
Yep.
And I had some great matches. Even if you go back and watch those things on Heat, Stevie was so fired up every week. And there were a couple other people I had one with
Was Raven there at the time?
PJ, I had one with Raven. I mean, every week on Heat, I was still producing these really great matches. And just my body looked the best it had been. And just there was a different feel for me. And the whole style of my match and my whole demeanor was different from the Hardy Boys, so to say, in the extreme style. But it was something I definitely felt I could excel in if given the opportunity.
And what was your character at that point? Were you developing into the Manitude type character at that point, or was that
really?
How did that come about?
Really, there was no character development. I mean, really, I was just an extension of just being half of the Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
Because I think when we started at that point, when we were kind of split for a second and people were looking at us both, Jeff just carried on the persona of the Hardy Boys, and I knew that really wasn't my gig.
You had input on who the Hardy Boys were, but it did become identified with what was more Jeff's natural persona.
Yeah, no. I mean, my gig isn't to go out and jump off 12-foot ladders. Yep. I mean, I can do that stuff here and there. My gig is to go out and be solid and beat the fuck out of people, and you know what I mean? That's a lot more of me.
And logic-based, tell a story in your match.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell a story and make everything mean something and really get the most out of everything.
Yeah.
Jeff, on the other hand, was very just had, this is my big trick here, and then I'll do some stuff, whatever, and then I've got another big trick here, and then another big trick here, and but it worked for him, you know what I mean? And it's just, he became the personification of what the Hardy Boys were, so it's almost like The Office too. I felt like I was stripped because they kind of took everything that we built together and kind of put it on him, if you understand what I mean.
Absolutely, yeah.
And at the point in time, it was a little discouraging, but I said, that's okay, because I definitely can do something on my own, which I later would prove that I could.
Yeah.
You know, but whenever Jeff started doing that on his own, they kind of gave him all the juice we had as the Hardy Boys. It's like he became this guy that was like live for the moment, and he became the guy that was just, you know, didn't care what he did. He would attack the Undertaker. He would do this, do that. Very free spirit, which was a cool deal, and it fit him so good because it was very similar to the person he really is.
And do you blame management at this point? Steve Austin leaves, and management's looking, and they need someone to fill in, and Jeff had not been utilized in that manner in a top spot as a singles wrestler yet, and in their mind, he was more popular with the fans because he could do what fans expected from the Hardy Boys in a singles match with Taker. Do you blame them for choosing him at that moment instead of going with you?
Not really. I mean, it's just hard to blame them. It wasn't done in spite, and like I don't think it was done against me. It was just like kind of what was thrown in front of them.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things, like there's so many different personalities and so many people that, you know, management is trying to look after. And if you're not one of those top 2 or 3 guys, then it's real easy to get, you know, fall behind. And just Jeff stood out as being the more attractive person to roll with. And I understand that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there is Jeff and Matt contributed a lot to that team. And he you know, Matt is really a role model employee. And don't forget about Matt is my main thing. You know, and it's real easy too, like when I say that, like when you get lost in the shuffle, they'll forget about you. It's a very what have you done for me lately type deal.
Yep. Now, do you think at that moment, in their moment of need, that Jeff was able to instantly do something as a short-term fix that would have taken more time to build if you were put in that spot? Or do you think if they said we need, if Jeff were injured and they said, Matt, we're going with you, do you think you would have actually been more effective immediately as an opponent for Undertaker?
No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
I think because Jeff did have the standout representation of the Hardy Boys, I think he was better for the short term.
Yeah.
But once again, it's just like, you can't think in short term all the time. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I think if I'd been put in that same spot that he did, I would have done really well.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been different because, like, Jeff.
Well, your heart would have been in it. You wouldn't have been seeing this as, oh man, I have to stick around longer like he did because he was ready to go home.
I'm just saying, like, if that would have been something you'd put me in, he would have had more momentum as it went through. But towards the end of it, it'd been a real career maker for me.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
Yep. So now you're on Heat. You're in some ways off the radar. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on Heat that if you quizzed.
No, being on Heat's off the radar.
Yeah, I mean, Vince and Stephanie would lose a quiz if they were quizzed on what was going on Heat to the average wrestling fan because, you know, it's just off their radar. It's something that's done. Mm-hmm. But yet you had to be making an impression on some people and also gaining confidence yourself, even if it wasn't Vince and Stephanie.
Right. And, I mean, there were people, people knew what I could do, you know, especially like, you know, the agents who saw stuff on house shows. I'll tell you this, whenever the weekend Steve walked out, we were in Albuquerque, I'm trying to think where the other show was, Albuquerque and Bakersfield, California. And they were going to announce to people at the beginning of the show, or no, I'm sorry, not the beginning of the show, after the first match, they were going to say Stone Cold Steve Austin isn't here tonight, and if you want your refund, you have to get it done in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was their deal. But, you know, whenever the company does that, they want to put something out right after they make that announcement that's going to keep their attention.
Yeah.
The match that went out that they asked to go 20 minutes and have a pay-per-view quality match was Matt Hardy versus Eddie Guerrero.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else was on the show, girls included.
Yep.
I mean, and that definitely says that they had faith in me to go out there and put on a kick-ass match that would keep people involved. And they asked us, you know, just go out and have like a pay-per-view quality match. And actually went out there with Eddie, and Eddie's an interesting guy to work with. He's just got a phenomenal heart. He's just such a great guy. You know, he's very on and off in different situations just because he's been through so much in his life, I think. But Eddie's also a guy, like, I'm very good at working on a timetable. Like, if I need to go 20 minutes in the ring, I'm very good at doing it. Eddie, if you say go 20 minutes, he might go 15, he might go 39. You just never know. Eddie just gets out there and he feels whatever his heart tells him.
Yep.
And I remember that first night we went 26 minutes, a little bit longer, and I knew it was time to start wrapping things up.
Yeah.
And the next night in Bakersfield, they said, you guys don't have to go that long. We actually went 30 minutes. You know,
Wow.
well, we had great matches each night, and even to have the respect.
Is that the first time you'd worked Eddie singles? Like you're on the spot on TV?
No,
Okay, so you had a little.
Actually, I had a program with him before. Actually, when I won the European title, it was with him.
Oh yeah, okay.
And we started going into a long program actually, where that was actually the first time they actually considered breaking us up. But then that actually died because Eddie had his demons at that point, and that's when he'd left for his problems.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't the first time I'd worked Eddie. I'd worked him a lot of times. And just knowing that those guys respect you, like him and a Benoit, like you know too, like because they're the best in the business as far as when you get in there and wrestle. And if they know that they go, cool, Matt, I'm working you tonight. This is gonna be great. It's gonna be easy. It'll be fun. That says a lot in itself.
Because Eddie and Benoit, world travelers. I mean, Mexico, Japan, ECW, WW, WCW. They had been everywhere, wrestled every style of person. They know who they want to work with at this point in their career. So it is absolutely a compliment if they're not rolling their eyes going, oh, gee, I got to carry this guy.
Right.
Yeah. So you had these it was back-to-back nights against Eddie. And did you get any direct feedback from management? Is that how WWE works? Where
people were taking notice of the matches I was having on the road as a singles wrestler and the matches that I was having on Heat week in and week out, even if the higher management really weren't paying close attention to it. And I was working with one of the writers, and he'd given me an opportunity. He said, well, if you want to do a small promo, just a drop-in promo to go over your entrance as you're going to the ring, we can do that. And I said, oh, yeah, that's cool. He said, just think about what you want to say, and you kind of have free reign with it. It was actually Ed Koski. And unfortunately, he was pretty lenient. Like, whatever I wanted to say, I could. And I dropped in, and I know I concluded, I said, and in Stevie Richards tonight, you'll find out what it's all about to get in the ring with Matt Hardy, version 1. And that was actually the first time that I did that. And everybody, that saw it was like, what the fuck's that?
Yeah.
It's like I've got all this stuff laid out in my head, it just kind of seemed silly to people in the beginning, whatever. But I definitely had an idea and a concept I wanted to do, and if they'd give me an opportunity, I felt like I could do something with it.
And what was the concept behind it? Where did that brainstorm come from?
The concept behind it was that as far as me being on my own, like whenever you saw Matt and Jeff Hardy together, it was the Hardy Boys, a tag team as a unit, and you only saw like a part of me, and you only saw a part of Jeff, because there is a part of me that does enjoy going through tables and jumping off ladders and having these high impact matches, which is fun, but that's really not my forte. That's not what I'm about. I mean, if you see Matt Hardy version 1, you're seeing the true, pure form of Matt Hardy, the real Matt Hardy, what Matt Hardy represents, what he means. Yeah. It's not just an extension of Matt Hardy that's one of the Hardy Boys. So Matt Hardy version 1, just the full thing, just like a piece of computer software or whatever. The original, the OEM, the original Matt. That's what version 1 represented.
Okay, very good. And had you proposed this at any time in the past, before this, or was this something that you had the idea and you decided to do it, and the timing was right?
Well, I had the idea. I actually, ironically enough, I suggested the idea for myself, Jeff, Edge, and Christian to be the version 1 group at one point of the version 1, the 4 guys that were the version 1 prototypes of what the future of wrestling is supposed to be.
And was that when DX was still around, or was that...
That was when DX was still around, because that's what we all wanted to do. It's just after we had the ladder match and we had this mutual respect thing and the people were into all 4 of us, and I just thought we could really do something as an act, and I was going, wow, this would be cool. Like, I remember speaking with those guys, we could do something, and we're against DX, because we knew that would definitely elevate us. Yeah. But apparently people heard about that. They said, nah, we really don't want you guys together. We're going to just keep you apart. We don't want an association there. But I just think the 4 of us, 4 young, good-looking guys, would have been. I think it could have been pretty cool. I think if I would have been booking promoter, I would have took a shot with it, especially coming off that ladder match and how appreciated
ovations
we were. But I mean, you could have went anywhere out from there, but not to give it a shot. I think they were kind of missing something. But I don't. What do I know?
So did you get feedback to the hand signal when you did that? I mean, what kind of reaction did you have? You said people were going, "What was that all about?"
People just thought. I mean, why'd you do that, or what does that mean, or is it goofy, and it's hard. I mean, people. The first time people get a taste of anything, they're not really going to understand it or explain it until you have a chance to do it kind of over and over and over again. And I think the performer that does something like that has to have definitely a concept in mind of where they're going to go from point A to point Z. You know what I mean?
And how did you? That was point A. How did you work to B, C, D, and E from there?
Well, Mattitude was another thing that I had in mind. And just saying Mattitude was more or less like my soul. And just whichever way they end up going with it, as far as being a babyface or a heel, I mean, there's a couple ways you could do it. I mean, obviously, just out there saying Mattitude is obviously a heel thing, rubbing in somebody's face. But, there's a way that could be a babyface thing, too. And that's definitely 2 of the concepts I had as far as version 1 and as far as Mattitude. And whenever I figured I was going to be going to SmackDown, I figured more or less it would be a heel. And there were just several different concepts, and the MFers thing was something I'd want to do even before I ever went to SmackDown, as far as having 2 people with me, or even referring to my fans as the MFers, the Mattitude followers. I mean, there were just several different concepts that I could see in this, and just as far as the direction I was going to go, kind of considered what kind of environment or situation they were going to put me in, because it would definitely be different if you were in a program with Bob Holly as opposed to being in a program with Undertaker, or opposed to being in a program with Rey Mysterio. Yeah.
So, to talk about the transition from Heat to SmackDown, what was the time frame of that, and what opportunities did you have at that point in SmackDown to start really being able to show what you wanted to be able to show on television?
Oh, this is another good story too, which I'll tell you what led to the version 1 character, which I know how it happened, even though people wouldn't admit to it. It's just whenever Jeff was doing his own as a singles performer, and I'd asked for this opportunity. I actually spoke to Vince. I remember actually speaking to Hunter, and one of the things you said earlier, he said, well, I think Jeff, this is directly from Hunter, he said, well, I think Jeff is a very talented, but he's a very short-term performer. He said, I see a lot more over a long term as far as really being around and being dedicated, and over the long haul being able to wrestle style where you can do a lot more. He's kind of like a shooting star. He's very bright for a certain amount of time, but could burn out real quick and be limited. And I remember in speaking with management, I said, I know you guys. I said, I'm not saying I'm more popular than Jeff. That's how I would preface all this. I'm not saying I'm more popular than Jeff, but I'm saying without me, we wouldn't have been what we were. and Jeff isn't 10 times more popular than I am.
Yeah.
And all I'm looking for is an opportunity. And if you'll give me the opportunity here or SmackDown or wherever it may be, that's all I want. And I'll take advantage
Quit
of it.
comparing you to Jeff. Start comparing you to other people on the roster.
Yeah,
and
no,
say,
not even that.
Can
Just,
I be,
don't compare me to Jeff. Just don't compare me.
Yeah, just take me at who I am.
Just take me at face value and look at me. Why are you comparing
It doesn't
me?
have to be either or.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, we're two people who have a lot of different things we can contribute. And then when I went to SmackDown, the first night I turned on Jeff. It was in Seattle, and we actually had two shots back to back. Raw was there and SmackDown was there, and I remember just hearing a couple days before, well, you're going to be staying for SmackDown because you're going on Tuesday. And I remember I turned on Jeff that night and gave him the Twisted Fade, and like half the crowd cheered, and half the crowd booed, and they just thought that Jeff was so loved and nobody gave a fuck about me. That's honest to God what they thought, because that's what they believed, and like what they believe is what becomes reality, to them.
Yep.
It's scary. But anyway, that had happened, and I Twisted Faded him, and really there were a ton of cheers, there were some boos. And then I went to SmackDown the next night, and I know on SmackDown they had me come out, and just like Shannon Moore and Shane Helms playing off our real-life friendship, they had a situation where some guys were jumping them after the match, and they started making a comeback, and they fought these guys off up and nailed them both out of the rings. Then my music hit, and I came to the ring and acted like I was their savior, like I made the save for them. And then I remember I hugged them both and held their hands up, and I made them pick me up on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was that they were going to turn me into was like a delusional guy who always thought I was much better than my brother, who would sit there and go, well, hey, my brother may be 10 times more popular than I am, but I don't think he's 10 times more popular than me. He's not. I'm more popular than him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the spin they put on that.
Yeah.
And the following week after that, we were in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And it's just, man, we have a strong grassroots following. And it's not just Jeff, it's me too, in North Carolina. And I remember we went there, and they had a lot of good stuff for me there. I remember I ran out and made the same kind of deal, made the pseudo save for those two guys, and got a huge reaction. Like that was kind of the ongoing joke, like in commentary. They said, "Oh my God, Matt Hardy, he is getting a huge reaction, but he thinks it's 3 times as big or whatever." I mean, because it was Fayetteville too, and there's so many family and friends there, and just people that support me because I'm from that area.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay, we go out there, and you probably will get a big reaction. They openly admitted that. And they said, and then when you come back, we're going to do a thing where you can just take credit for making the save for these guys, tell them how great you are, or whatever, and then say, if you didn't think that reaction was big, then watch this. I'll go back out, and I'll make another entrance, and my reaction will be, twice as big, 3 times as big. And he said, just go to all the corners, just go until they boo the shit out of you, and they won't cheer for you anymore. And I went out. It was a very big reaction again. I went to each corner, and they cheered, they cheered, they cheered. They never stopped cheering. You know what I mean? There was no boos. They said, and
were you happy with this, that they were cheering, or would you actually rather have had them?
I honestly, I was happy because I knew kind of what they were doing too. But I knew like at some point I would have to get in the groove of doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it was kind of just like, it's kind of like proving your point in a
That's what I was
way.
thinking, yeah.
But anyway, I do this, and I had a small match with Chavo Guerrero, and it's something where, once again, I was distracted, and he beat me. We did the thing at the end, and this was my line too. I remember I ran this specifically by Vince to see if he would care if I say it. They had the ref mic'd. And I said, I can't believe this. Matt Hardy losing in Fayetteville? You screwed me. I said, this is a bigger travesty. This is a bigger travesty than Bret Hart being screwed in Montreal, or something along those lines. And everybody's like, well, this guy is delusional, which that was real cool. And like I remember asking Vince about that. I said, is that too much? Can I say that? He's going, oh, yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
He was like real into what I was doing at that time. And I think it was the following week after that I did a pre-tape, and that's where I was doing the pre-tape. And I bust him on the version 1 thing, and he thought it was cool. And I remember it was a pre-tape where Steph was in charge, and I did something at the end, or she came walking through, and I said, Matt Hardy, version 1. And she stopped, cut. Why are you saying that? I said, well, I've kind of been doing that on TV, and that's my hand sign and the character I'm wanting to go. And she's going, well, I hate to break it to you, she said, but that's never going to get over.
And you had been doing this on television, and she just hadn't seen it?
Well, I think she did see it, but I just don't think she was really a fan of it.
Yeah, okay.
I said, well, I mean, if you don't want me to do it, I won't, but I believe it could work if you just give me the opportunity to do it. I mean, that was just like one thing. It was just, I still really believe if you have somebody that has a concept of what they're doing, you got to give them some free reign, man. You got to let them go out there and either succeed on their own or fail on their own. That's the only way you learn.
Yeah.
And you got to have people that are able to think on their feet.
And how did you talk back to her? I mean, were you respectfully?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I always am. I mean, it's just, sure, that's exactly how I said there. I said, well, if you don't want me to do it, I won't do it.
Yeah.
But I would love to do it if you think it's fine, and at least try it, give it an opportunity, and then if nothing happens out of it, then I won't.
Yeah.
And
you basically got the green light from her then to at least go ahead and...
Well, she said, okay, that's fine, you can try it. And then after a couple of weeks, it was definitely caught on.
Yeah. It's like when Vince didn't understand 316 what is this?
Right, sure.
I mean, again, I don't want to.
Right.
V1 never got the chance to be 316,
Right.
but nevertheless, it's
Right.
McMahon sometimes don't have, whether it's Stephanie or Vince, they don't always see something that everyone else is seeing or that the wrestler themselves sees.
Right, and sometimes, I mean, it's not even all the way to be seen. It's not all the way there where you can see that it's going to happen, but you have to give things a chance.
Yep.
You know, it's just like if you plant a seed, you just can't automatically expect it to be there the next day. You have to give it a little time to grow and cultivate, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, go ahead and march through now. You've got V1 going, you're a singles wrestler, you're on SmackDown. Are you happy with what the creative freedom you have and the latitude you've been given?
Yeah, it was really, and I remember just getting, speaking with one of the writers, and they said something, I remember I had something that was pretty cool on TV that I was going to do. I don't remember specifically what it was, but then I remember getting a call and said, just for the record, like, you're not doing that now, you're wrestling Undertaker in the main event on SmackDown. Really? Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And, we did that, and that started tying into the Brock angle. Then I actually got tied right up in that, and I actually worked Taker like 4 weeks back to back, and actually got, one win by count out, and then actually one win in a no DQ match, Falls Count Anywhere, where Brock interfered and actually pinned him, which was pretty cool. Just to say that, you have pinned the Undertaker, because not a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Regardless of how you got there, it's the fact is that you got there.
Did you feel he gave you enough at that point, or do you wish you would have gotten maybe a little more? Because it didn't. My memory, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my memory is after that 4 weeks, I don't think you came out of it stronger in the sense that you were treated as somebody who was nearly at his level.
Right.
You came away stronger for having worked with Taker. That's a great opportunity.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So it's kind of a combination of both. A little disappointment,
Yeah.
but I won't trade it in.
Yeah, but definitely, coming off where I was coming before, being on Heat every week, even having these great matches, you can't beat it going with the guy who's the longest reigning person in the company and, the top star on that show. So, I definitely wasn't going to complain.
It wasn't perfect, but
he was good to work with, and he was really easy. I mean, he wanted things his way, but he was very easy to work with, and I have a ton of respect for him because he is definitely willing to work with guys. Do you know what I mean? It's like he's not. I'm not getting in the ring with him and lowering myself to that level. I mean, he's definitely willing to.
Yeah.
And
well, Steve Austin got a rap for that. I mean, he had different reasons in each. You have to judge each situation individually, but Taker does have a rep for kind of taking guys and going, no, I'll try to make somebody. And he doesn't always do the best thing with them, but he will work with them.
I'll tell you what. Right towards the end of the thing, like we wrestled for those 4 weeks. It's almost 4. I think it was either 3 or 4 weeks back to back that we wrestled on TV. He's like, he said, when are we going to stop wrestling? But we did a deal where I did a promo one week, which was actually real cool. It was definitely, it was the first time I probably did an in-ring promo. It was like the opening segment of the show and a long promo, and it went really well. And that's.
Are you in the ring?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was that the first time you had done an in-ring feature promo? Because that's a big deal to get to that stage.
Yeah, and it was the open of the show, too.
Yeah.
And it was an in-ring feature promo, and I had a ton of heat that night. I remember it was really good, because just from doing this stuff with Taker, I mean, one thing that I think some people don't understand is, like, it's okay, like, you need, to be credible, like you said, I think you need a little more offense, but sometimes, even in getting heat, sometimes you can still be successful in just getting your ass beat as far as making people dislike you because you're like such a punk.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
especially if you come back the next week acting cocky,
right?
Like nothing happened.
So anyway, I remember just having that first promo, and there was a lot of we want Jeff. There was a lot of you suck and whatever, but it was really well. Things were going good, and we did a deal where he came and intervened, and it was where he broke his hand the week before, and I remember we had a brawl, and it was not going to be as much as it was, but he made it into more. And he actually, there were things that he suggested to me about doing that really were to help me specifically. He's like, well, no, you should do this and do this to me, and I'll take more time, and I'll let you do this. And, and where it was like, really, I could tell he was looking at me going like.
He was being generous.
Well, not only that, he was looking at me going, he's got potential.
Okay.
And that's absolutely what said to me. He's got potential, and I want to help this guy because he could be somebody that could help make money around here. He could be somebody that I could work with or against down the road. And it was just like, he wasn't treating me as just like, writing me off as just like some guy he's forced to work with. He's like, this is a guy that I'd like to help because he's a pretty good guy, and also I think he's got some talent.
And so where did you go after that 4 weeks with Taker? Did things go up or down or stay the same?
Things, it's very odd. Actually, they went to their Hell in a Cell match, and there was actually talk of me doing like a big bump from the top of the Hell in a Cell during that thing, which kind of at that point, I didn't think it meant too much then because stuff had already been done, and like, like if the big thing was Taker and Brock, there's no use in me going out there and killing myself and then taking a bump that's going to like be the only thing talked about in the match. And then I'm not really going to do anything afterwards. And then plus, like, I didn't really feel like jeopardizing my health at that point. So then it was not a bad thing, but that didn't happen. And then just had a couple weeks.
Did you turn it down, or did they just kind of, the idea was there and then just
it was kind of there, and like we just threw it around.
Okay.
It's like we decided kind of not to do it. But anyway, we had a couple weeks. I was going to actually do some stuff with Mysterio and Edge at that point. And that's where not to speculate, I don't know their ears, but somewhere internally it got changed to A-Train instead of being me, and it was something that Paul Heyman had specifically written for me because Paul Heyman was a pretty big behind me at that point. And Adam and I, being close friends, wanted to work together. And Ray, I just hadn't known him too long, but we were excited about having the opportunity to do some stuff together. So somewhere along there was somebody that changed it and pulled me out and put A-Train.
And what's the story on that? What's your theory? What have you been told, even if you don't know for sure? What's your hunch?
I don't know. I kind of what I've heard is just that Johnny Ace and Fit Finlay, a couple of guys from they were WCW guys originally, just thought that A-Train would fit in that role better than me.
And do you think Undertaker was kind of A-Train's guy, or A-Train was Undertaker's guy too? I mean, that Taker was formed. Do you think Taker interjected, or Taker was pretty high on you at that point?
Yeah, I don't think Taker did.
Yeah.
Taker liked A-Train a lot.
Yeah.
But I really think it was just, that Johnny and Fit really would rather see A-Train have that slot than me.
And was it to spite you, or because they believed in A-Train, or I mean, can you kind of, knowing their situation, the politics of everything that's happened since then, do you think it was out of spite based on something?
It's possible.
Yeah. And why is
Once
that?
again, I don't want to speculate, but I don't know.
Yeah. And what happened with Johnny Ace? I mean, we almost have to kind of rewind for a second. We'll jump back. Because it's a big part of your departure from WWE too. Mm-hmm. What happened with Johnny Ace, John Laurinaitis, and Fit Finlay, and I don't know if Dean Malenko was a part of it. What happened that put you on the opposite side of them?
Honestly, I don't know as far as like what really did. But the one instance I can think of where there was a little altercation is I had a match with Hurricane one night on a house show somewhere in Montana. We had a really good match, super happy with everything, and I remember Fit just kind of critiqued it the next day. This is right after I was a heel too on SmackDown. He kind of critiqued it after the match, not the next day, directly after the match. And he just, his criticisms were, we weren't killing each other enough. We weren't physical enough or whatever, because he was at ringside. And, not that we disagreed, but, he said, well, didn't you think the match kind of, we got out of what we wanted, the people were extremely happy, everything was good, and he just had things he was critical of. And he says, well, as being a heel, you should do this, you should do that, da-da-da. He says, you don't have any passion. I remember that was one of his things that really bothered me. He said, you're out there, you don't have any passion. He said,
kind of flippantly, disrespectfully.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't have any passion. He said, you're out there. He said, you got to lay into this, that. You don't have any passion. And I was just like, how can you say, you've done a lot, and I respect that. But how can you say that to me, somebody who is given everything I have for this company for the last 4 years?
He's showing really a lack of knowledge. I mean, maybe there's things to criticize you for, but I think that's probably the last thing.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely the last thing. Nobody can question my passion.
Yeah.
I mean, honest to God. And he said, well, you don't have any passion. I'm going to teach you how to be a heel because you're not a good heel. And he said, come tomorrow, like real early, 3 o'clock. And I was like, well, I have an appearance or something. There was something I had going on the next day. I said, I can't be there at that time. He said, well, no, be there at 3. And then what happened is I came in at the regular time that I could come in, and I remember he pitched a fit about it and told Johnny, and Johnny called me to the side, like, why weren't you here? I said, well, I told him, like, he said, I don't have any passion or whatever. I said, I just, no disrespect to him, but I mean, that's pretty disrespectful to me.
Yeah.
And I said,
it exposes him for not really knowing about you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but then he said, well, yeah, I understand that he shouldn't have said that, but that's why I'm in talent relations and he's not. We kind of talked about it for a second, but obviously there was a little friction there.
Yeah.
But it's like one of those things. Just I would appreciate being spoke to with a little more respect with that, especially considering my tenure here.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with being criticized. I love being criticized. And I love for people watching me work or speak or perform, whatever, and say, well, I think you could do this, think you could do that. But, that was a little odd. So, I mean, that's really the only thing I can point back as far as it stemming from that incident.
And there was nothing, nothing else? I mean, just that, you think that, and you think that's, things are petty.
Do you have anything else that you think?
No, nothing comes to mind. But it just seems like that would be really petty for that to be the moment that defined how you were treated by people in power.
And then, I think there was, and Fit was the agent for the girls' life. Fit and Amy had some problems.
Okay.
At certain times.
And
and me and Amy pretty much were like, as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when the WCW transition came in, do you think that when some of the people from WCW came in, John Laurinaitis and Fit Finlay were in that group, do you think that they felt that they had to be loyal to their people and that you were one of the people who kind of were standing in the way or that they had to push aside, and that then you reacted a certain way and there was tension there because of that merger element?
Possibly, but just still a speculation.
It is speculation, yeah. You would never...
I would never have any idea, it's just...
Yeah.
I mean, because I really didn't have a problem with either one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't like you were being swearing at each other.
No, not at all.
Seinfeld and Newman.
Not at all.
John, Matt, nothing like that.
Right, not at all.
So okay, well let's fast forward then back to where you were with V1, and you're going to be in this great program that you're excited about, Edge and Ray, right?
Two programs, yeah.
And then A-Train gets put in, and you end up where?
Just kind of floating.
Yeah.
Especially after having all this great steam for being involved, kind of as a secondary story, but being involved in the top story that's going on with Taker and Brock. I was definitely a second tier player in it, but I was still in it.
Within the WWE structure, how Vince McMahon has it set up, if you think something is done unfairly, something is done in a way that is just a rug, just pulled right out from under you, can you go, knock on his door and go, hey, I just want to make you aware this seems unfair, here's what happened? Or is that being a crybaby, or do you get a reputation for going above people's heads?
I did ask about it.
Yeah.
I asked Vince about it. So did Adam.
Yeah. And so how'd that go?
So did Paul Heyman. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
We didn't really hear anything. He said, don't worry about it. You're going to be taken care of. He says, if we're not doing this with you, then we'll do something else.
Okay.
They could possibly be something better.
So go ahead and march forward. What's the next?
The next thing ended up being the Cruiserweight deal.
Yeah.
And they said, right now, we really don't have anything going with the Cruiserweight division. What do you think if we did something where like you lost some weight and you were in the Cruiserweight division, maybe won it and even built something with you and Ray? We think that could be big. And it's just one of those things where
your goal wasn't to be considered a cruiserweight.
No, it wasn't. But it's like I'm open to challenges, and that sounded like it could be kind of cool to do. The main thing that would concern me is just because I had aspirations to do more than that in the WWE. I just didn't want to be like pegged as a cruiserweight, because that's one thing that people sometimes get pegged as things. But just the whole way they were going to do it with like me losing weight and saying that I was really too big to be a cruiserweight, I just kind of really didn't sweat it. And then I just decided, I said, well, just have as much fun with it as you can, and try and make it as good as possible. Because you could either do it and like not like it and bitch about it and be miserable, or you could say, well, okay, I'm going to have fun with it.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about there. You got to have as much fun as you can, because you're never going to get things the way you want them always.
And the way it worked out, it worked out really well. I mean, you guys,
it did.
You got television time from it. You got to work with Ray. You had that tremendous SmackDown match. It was a main event match. I don't know if the Cruiserweight titles ever before or ever since has been in the main event on a major TV show.
Not on a WWE show.
And it did a great rating. Of course, it didn't seem to make a difference.
Right. Well, I mean, even too, like, I did the thing with Billy, and then we built up WrestleMania, and we only had a very small amount of time at WrestleMania just because of the way WrestleMania is.
Yeah.
Which, but whatever we had 6 minutes. I mean, we put the most you could put in that 6 or 7 minutes, whatever. I mean, it's just that's what I do anyway. And then after that, like, we're gonna do some stuff with Spanky, who I liked a lot too, which was fun, and whatever. But it was just like nothing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it was once again like I'm the Cruiserweight champion. We're just not really doing anything,
Yeah.
and they're waiting to pick up the thing with me and Ray again. And eventually they do, and once we had that for 2 or 3 weeks and we kind of built to it, it was really good. And even there were a couple promos in there that I thought, there was one promo that Ray and I did face to face, I thought was real strong, just with me as a heel. And if you go back and watch that tape in Anaheim, just at the amount of like signs that I'd had, there was so much, people were really behind me.
Yep.
And I thought, like, if you were going to turn me babyface, like, it'd been the time to do it right after that.
Yeah.
Or definitely I should have been moved into something at the next level, a U.S. title, something, Benoit or Eddie Guerrero. And that was actually talked about, but just stuff never came to be. And that just like been like the story of my career. It's just like all this great stuff's talked about, but it just doesn't come to be.
And what happened after the Cruiserweight program came to an end? What was next for you?
It was going to be in the U.S. title tournament and hoping to either become the champion or work against the champion or something to that effect. And then just the way things went is first round match, I wrestled Rikishi and beat him. And even at that point, we were in Madison Square Garden. It was cool. It wasn't overwhelming, but there was a chant like, let's go Hardy, during the match.
Yeah.
Because Rikishi was one of those guys too, like, especially in New York, man, at the Garden, where, he'd just been kind of doing the same thing for a long time, and, people were ready to see something new and different. And I was something new and different at that time. And then I'd love to have went to the finals against Benoit, but I didn't. I went against Benoit in the second round of the U.S. title tournament, and that's the match where he broke my nose, and we had a little bit of time. We had a really good match. It was really strong. That actually stands out. I really enjoyed that match a lot. It sucked getting hurt, but like nothing puts you in the mood like getting hurt and having blood all over you and stuff too. So that's actually one of my favorite matches. And then after losing out in the U.S. title tournament, then I just kind of floated around, and I had some good matches with people. I know there were a couple of good Eddie Guerrero matches in there, and then whenever we came to a point where we knew I was going to leave SmackDown and go to Raw, for some reason, the SmackDown writers started acting like it was WCW and I was leaving to go to WWE. And they said, well, I heard this line. I said, well, before you leave, we need you to put somebody over. I was like, what are you talking about? This is insane. Before you leave, it's the same company. The paychecks come from the same guy.
I mean, in a sense, Vince did want competition between the brands, but not to the point where one brand would destroy someone on their way to the other.
Sure.
Or not destroy, but, do damage too.
Yeah. And that's one of those things too. Like I wasn't even supposed to be involved in that. I mean, he was supposed to have a match against Shannon one time, and I think he was going to get his first win against Shannon. This was early on, before I was ever involved with him. And then somebody had a bright idea. They said, "Well, let's send Matt down there." He said, "Oh, let's change it. Let's have Matt trip him and Shannon beat him. It's more heat, more sympathy for Zach if he does that." And then somebody came back and said, "Oh, let's make it even worse. Let's have Matt fuck him and he loses, and let's have Matt go in and twist the fate him a couple times." And I was like, "Oh God, I know where this is going to lead. This is bad." Because I'm going to get involved in something here. And lo and behold, that's what happened.
You had mentioned Zach Gowen, and that was one of the, I don't want to say one of the more memorable situations, but he was a memorable wrestler. He was a one-legged wrestler. He lost his leg to cancer as a child, comes into World Wrestling Entertainment, and he gets a push very quickly without a lot of experience. And from what I've heard, his locker room conduct was a bit of an immature disaster.
Well, first off, I'll just say, Zach, when it came to wrestling me, he did pretty good for a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. Anyway,
You've been waiting to say that.
No, I didn't. I just popped in my head there. But anyway, I don't know. I mean, he was actually really nice. He was very respectful to me, just because I mean he was still young too, and he'd probably watched me, years prior. And we did the thing with Zach and whatever. I've lost to anybody you can. I mean, winning and losing just becomes irrelevant at some point. I mean, although it's not like. It's just not cool to lose all the time, especially in this given profession, but you just have to get over it. I mean, you just have to think about, you have to make your most important mindset just, I have to perform well, regardless if I win or lose, you know what I mean? Because you can only do what you're given the power to do, and that is perform and do it as good as possible. Yeah. Zach, I guess what happened is, after he took a little leave of absence from after we did our thing, he was hurt or something, he went to Louisville for a little while, after I guess he did a deal where, Brock had broke his one good leg or whatever. He went to Louisville for a little while.
Threw him down the stairs, actually, I think.
Yeah, and he went to Louisville for a little while, and I think down there he was just kind of, he had a case of the big head is what came back just from the other people. Like, well, these people, I don't need to be here because I'm on, SmackDown or this, that.
Matt Hardy.
Either thing, whatever, yeah. He hadn't yet. He would in the future, but he hadn't yet at that point. But anyway, there were just, I think, like some attitude problems with him is what I got back. And, like, I never experienced them firsthand. Yeah. But I just think the thing is just like, if you take a young kid and put him in this environment and have him work with Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon and all the top stars, it's overwhelming as it is for me after being so humble and getting there to be involved in this. And you just have to always kind of try and keep yourself in check. But just to put somebody who is literally a young kid in that situation, it's easy for it to happen. It's almost unfair to him. And I think it was probably, some of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you enjoyed working with him? Or, I mean, it's a challenge wrestling somebody with one leg. I mean, that's a completely different, I mean, it had to limit the things you could do, and you had to be very creative. Was that one of the bigger challenges?
Yeah, it was. It was interesting to do it as a challenge, I guess. Yeah. But then too, it was also very limited. It was very limiting, and there were a lot of things you couldn't really do. Like I didn't want, when you can't shoot somebody into the ropes or you can't have somebody running a lot, that limits a lot of stuff. Yeah. So definitely you have to change things around. It's hard to make matches exciting. When you take that element out. Yeah. And also too, it was. It's nothing against him or nothing against anybody that would be missing a limb. It was also very disturbing too to wrestle him. Yeah. It's just an odd thing. I remember we would do a spot where I would. Just grab him by the leg and throw his ass across the ring, and he just really like a fish out of water. It was just it was almost disturbing.
He rolled in it. I mean, it just.
And I think a lot of people were very inspired by the story and saw a lot of sympathy to him, but it was also still disturbing. Yeah. Yeah. But I guess it's pretty amazing to say that he's a one-legged guy that actually made it and was in the WWE for a short amount of time.
So anyway, you convinced Vince to let you move to Raw to be with Lita, and it just seemed like one thing after another just kind of didn't go right once you got there. Either bad luck or whatever, but kind of just in a nutshell, talk about what happened with your jump to Raw and how things didn't go the way that you hoped they would.
Right. I just thought for the longest time, like especially, like I pointed before, like after the Mysterio match, like I should have became a babyface. And it's just with me being a smaller guy, just like my style and even my look, it's just I'm more suited for that role if given the opportunity to perform the right way in that role. Yep. That's a big point. But anyway, I came back and I was a heel, and then there was an incident where. I think Amy said some things out of place, which we were just kind of associated together, so then I said stuff out of place as well, but just because she did. Yeah. And then, kind of put on the back burner. There was one time I was going to do something with Maven. He actually had a broken arm, so it was just kind of a string of bad luck. We were coming up to WrestleMania 20. There was an idea floating around about me doing something with Mark Henry, and he completely tore out his shoulder, so he went in for surgery. So then I was just out of luck again. So it was just like one of those things where it was just.
That was the time Henry got hurt?
Yeah.
That was that one time? Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that one time.
That was the one time.
That was the specific one time.
The Iron Man.
So it was just kind of a real bad string of luck.
Yeah, and every time you had a program that they had in mind for you and something happened, it wasn't like they were willing to rearrange everything to make room for you.
Right.
It just, we don't know what to do with Matt.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you got hurt somewhere along the line here too, where you were working injured, or was that a little bit later on?
No, it was shortly. Then after WrestleMania, we started doing the thing where the Lita Kane Matt deal, and I was going to become a babyface, and not under the perfect circumstances as I wish I could have done earlier. But just shortly after we got into this, just in a match wrestling, we were somewhere in Arizona, just on a live event, and I remember just taking a step and nailing him, and I just felt everything in my knee tear so much. And I can remember times past that there had been several times my left knee had hyperextended, and I always told people, I said, man, I've never had an injury, but this is going to get me. I know this knee is going to get me because it's weaker, and there's times where it'll hyperextend or it'll give out on me just from wear and tear over the years. And then that happened there, and I remember just trying to put a brace on it and go, and for a week I was okay, then the next week it went out again, and it just got gradually worse and worse, and I even wore braces, and I tried to work through as much as possible, and we were at a point where I'd finally got back in a groove of being involved in a bigger storyline, and I wanted to stay in there as much as possible, but my knee just kept. I was on all the shows, I wouldn't miss anything. It got just really bad, really bad.
You knew that something was wrong.
I knew something was majorly wrong. I was just trying to knock on wood and hope it was a minimal case scenario.
Yeah.
But I went and got an MRI. I was in Richmond, Virginia when I did that, and I remember the original MRI came by. The first doctor that looked at it misdiagnosed it, and he just said, well, I just think he's got his meniscus is torn real bad. He can get it scoped and be out for 6 weeks or something. And then another doctor looked at it. He said, no. He says, well, I can see your meniscus is torn. He says, maybe the reason this doctor couldn't diagnose your ACL is because it isn't there. It was just like nothing.
The case of the missing knee? The
missing
knee part?
The missing knee part. There was nothing there, nothing left.
Yeah.
And he said, it's not like, there's just, fibers or whatever hanging around. He says, it's just gone.
Wow.
And at that point,
is that just years of wear and tear, or is that one incident that makes
just
that
years and wear and tear?
Okay.
Yeah. Years of wear and tear, and then it got to the point where it probably had a small tear in it, and then I just kept tearing it more and more and more. And I just kept trying to work through it, just hoping that it would be okay.
Yeah.
That's definitely the wrestling mentality.
Now, were you happy with the way the Kane Lita situation was going? Because it was confusing. In some ways, people are watching this, and it was frustrating. You get squashed by Kane, and then something would happen this week, and the next week there wouldn't be a reaction that would seem natural, the way a real human being would react to something the week before. It seemed like the writing team was kind of in that mode of not really knowing where they were going with it and just doing it week to week, but also they didn't have a memory of what happened a week earlier. Did you have the same frustrations? Was that kind of common knowledge that the story was kind of being written for effect more than logic?
Sure.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things. I was happy to be back in the mix again, so to say. But, week in and week out, it definitely, for myself and Amy, we were both like, ugh.
And how about Kane? How does Glenn react to this? Does he just go along, get along?
Yeah, he's just, all three of us are actually pretty cool with whatever, as far as that goes. But it was just, I don't know, it was just something they were trying to get people's attention on, and they did. But just there were a lot of small things that could have been so much better in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just put me in a very odd spot as far as being portrayed as the good guy in the role too. It's just because I just felt like being in love, but then having all this bad stuff happen. I just felt such a pussy. I was going, well, I'm going to be a heel out of this.
Yeah.
Because that's what. If I was watching this and I saw this guy, I was like, he didn't do anything for me. It's like, what a pussy.
Yeah.
But whatever. It's just one of those things. You're given what you're given. You make the most out of it.
So let's fast forward. You ended up having to take time off. You had major surgery. You're out for a very long time. Then you come back, and what's waiting for you? What do you think is waiting for you?
Well, I'm trying to think about if I'd heard the ideas first. Well, I know I was supposed to be clear by the time. There was an attempt to be clear by the time the shows were in my hometowns.
Okay.
May 7th, we were going to be in Raleigh, and then a couple weeks later, we were in Fayetteville and Columbia because I was going to be on the shows.
Yeah.
So I kind of pushed it hard. I was given 9 months, I think, to recuperate, and I was ready at 6 months, which is pretty. I even felt like at 5 months I could have went. I wouldn't have been 100%.
Yeah.
But that I could have went because I was busting my ass in rehab trying to get ready. And I remember just talking to a few of the writers. I know there were a couple ideas talked around, maybe we could do something before WrestleMania. Nothing set in concrete at all, just because when you're off the radar, it's kind of like they really don't get stuff set for you until you're back on the radar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there were definitely going to be ideas because we got rave reviews because Vince and Stephanie loved the Kane, Lita, Matt thing.
Yeah.
And just the stuff we did the last few weeks, me and Amy got rave reviews.
Yeah.
And they loved it. So it's like I left being in such they were very favorable with me, and they were very excited about me coming back.
Yeah.
Because they were so into what I was doing before. Obviously, there was going to be something for me to do.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it was. Even when WrestleMania time came close, there were ideas about picking up some stuff with me and Kane, especially being involved with Lita and Trish. And the whole
Do you know what would have happened if you hadn't gotten injured, or was that very week to week also?
If
there was no time off, no interruptions and things, everything went the way.
Oh yeah, no, I would have probably got pushed after that.
Yeah.
Because they were so into what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because I remember there was one time where they said with me and Amy, they said, we really think your acting skills have came a long ways from the beginning of this, and just as a performer, you're really good in the ring, and just there's so many different directions we can go with you now. It's really limitless.
Yep. Yeah.
So which was cool, and it just made me want to go out and get healthy and come back again.
So was it the biggest frustration of your career to that point, that you weren't able to take full advantage of that momentum?
Yeah, I mean, that was frustrating. But probably not the biggest frustration of my career, because there have been a lot of frustrations along the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Probably not the biggest one, but
yeah.
I figured it's cool. I'll go out, I'll get fixed. It's the first time in 7 years, whatever. I've missed any time. Get fixed and come back, and things will be cool.
So,
and that's a big so.
So then you end up. We can fill in some gaps, but let's talk about what happened. The big story, and that is you start figuring out. You get word somehow, and you can tell the story that something weird is going on with your longtime girlfriend. Let's move ahead, and we can fill in some gaps. Talk a little bit about because the story's been told so many times how you and Lita got together and all that. You've written about it, but go ahead and just kind of in a nutshell talk about how long you guys had been together, when you established a relationship, and kind of move into then on your own finding out this bombshell that something was going on behind your back.
Well, the first time I met Amy, and it's just, I know you call her Lita, it's still hard for me to get into.
Yeah, either way is fine.
I'd met Amy around January of '99, actually, just when she was trying to get into the wrestling business. They were doing a independent show not far from my house, and I met her there. Seemed like a pretty cool girl. Just talked to her for a little bit. She said, we're doing some more shows in this area, and those guys were interested in bringing Jeff and I in. This was kind of when they were still doing third-party bookings. And I was going, yeah, sure, if you're in this area, I'd love to come there and do the show, whatever.
Yeah.
It's when we were still wearing the plaid tights and stuff. A few weeks later, we actually did a show with those guys, and I remember just hanging out with her, and she was never like the kind of girl I would have envisioned myself being with, especially at that time, but I remember just hanging out with her. She had like a real cool personality to her. And that night after the show, we actually drove back to Charlotte, and we went out to a club and hung out for a while, and I remember, that night we talked for a long time, and we got a tad bit physical, had a little bit of physical interaction that one time, and then we exchanged numbers, and we said, let's keep in contact or whatever. And it was still like, she was just coming out of a relationship that she'd been in for a long time she'd just been with a guy that was he was a singer or a dancer for a band. I'm not exactly sure. And they kind of broke up for a while, and then they were just kind of like seeing each other on and off still after that. It's like a lot of people said, she cheated on her first boyfriend with you, and really she didn't, because that's not the way it went. It's just like she was still associated with this guy, but they'd been split from being in a serious relationship for a while.
Yeah.
But anyway, we kind of stayed in contact, and I was busy still doing my wrestling stuff and whatever, and I wasn't worried about getting a girlfriend at this point in my career.
Yeah.
And then, every month or every few weeks, she would come down, we'd hang out, do whatever, and it was just a good time. It was just real easy, no strings attached. We just kind of enjoyed hanging out with each other.
Yeah.
Along this time, she was like really starting to get this bond for me, like a lot more than I was for her. And there was one point where I'd met this girl that'd come along, and we'll just call her Susie for the time being. And Susie now had the kind of looks that I'd always thought about having as a girlfriend. She was just like a blonde bombshell. And I'd met her, and actually me and one of my friends at this time, I'll call him Joe for the time being in the story, Susie and Joe. I hope I can remember that. I'll probably say their real names. But anyway, we both met her at the same time. And I actually started seeing her some. I'd went out with her a few times. And I remember telling Amy, like, hey, I just met this one girl, and I'm really into her, and I'm digging her. I said, and really, I'd rather not see you or really have any physical interaction with you, because I want to try and take this serious and do it right.
Yeah.
And there was actually one line that I said to her that always, Amy would bring this up often. And it was not said in spite at all. I just said, she's just like you. I said, she's really cool. Except she looks like a supermodel. And I so didn't mean for her to come out that way. And I apologize for that a lot. And she would hit that every once in a while. But so I went out with this girl for a while, and things were okay. It seemed like they were pretty cool. And I was still working on the road a lot at this point. This is when we were around the time of being tag champs, very, very busy, or right before that. And her sister really liked my friend Joe a lot more than me, and was kind of persuading her. He said, "Oh, I think you should go see Joe," or this, that, and the other thing. And there was one scenario where her sister and her husband got Susie and Joe to go out with them, and they went out, and I guess they drank a little bit or whatever that night, and they got together and they kissed or whatever. And I came back and found out about this from another friend of his, and I just confronted him. I said, "Well, dude, us being friends," I said, I really am not linked to this girl, but I just, as friends, I don't think it's cool. I said, we should probably, if we're going to continue our friendship, just kind of let this girl go. I said, and neither one of us fuck with her if we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And I said, probably, even if you do like her, it's probably going to end up being a choice, either her or me. And he actually chose her. So he kind of ended up going off in a bad road, and eventually he went into a real bad place. And he actually wrestled for a while, too. And as he wrestled, eventually he went to work for the WWE, and he eventually got released. And was in a real bad place and became real bad on drugs. Anyway, I started seeing Amy some more at this time, and I would see Amy occasionally here and there. And then I was at a point where that girl had really frustrated me, and then I was on the road, and Jeff and I were fucking maniacs for a few months as far as being on the road and like living the things, being young, hot heartthrobs or whatever. Like we were just kind of doing our thing.
Yeah.
And then once that started playing out and getting a little old, whatever, Amy was just getting to the point where she was getting ready to get a job with the company. And she did get a job, and I remember just vouching for her and saying, yeah, she is. She's been, she's worked real hard, and I think she's got some things that she could do. This is when she was doing Miss Congeniality at ECW, and I always stayed in contact with her. And then she did come to work at the company, and then once she came to work there, that's when we started really hanging out like on a more serious level. I wouldn't say right there we'd say we were boyfriend, girlfriend, or we were in love, but we started hanging out on a more serious level. So she came in. Obviously we started, at first she kind of traveled on her own or did her thing. She had a little bit of a different deal. But then once she kind of split from S.A. Rios and started working with us, and people knew that we were like, we never really spoke about it, but they knew that we were like together, at least in a capacity, when people weren't around.
Yeah.
And she started traveling with myself and Jeff, and it was just like, every night we were just like best friends. Like we would just check into the hotel and we'd be there. It's just like being with your best friend, but having all these great benefits, as far as being a female.
Yeah.
And really just both of us fell like so much in love with each other that we really didn't even know it. At this point, it was just so natural and so organic, and it was so great.
I was just going to say organic, that's, yeah.
And it's just unbelievable, because you didn't, like, we weren't even, and I just remember the first time, she had wanted to say this for a long time, and she said, I loved you, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit, because I've never been involved in a heavy relationship like that.
Yeah.
And then just, I knew that there was a part of me that did, and it was I was a couple weeks behind her with that, but I said, I do with you too, and it's odd, because I don't even know how we got here.
Yeah.
It's just like one of those things, but, I mean, I could see us getting here, but it's just like, we really weren't expecting it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then just things were great, man. And it was just, that point was just such a fun time in my life, because like I didn't even think about wanting to be with other girls, and the same thing with her.
Yeah.
And it's just like traveling with your best friend, who's also your girlfriend, and you're doing, your dream job. So it was very, very cool. And then it just kept getting stronger and stronger to the point came where she broke her neck, actually.
Yeah.
And whenever she broke her neck, that was devastating to me. I mean, it was to her too, because she kind of became a different person at that point. Just because she lost so much of her confidence, because her thing was she was just always so independent and always so strong. And now she felt like everything was kind of taken away from her. And I remember, actually, we were going overseas, and the company was real cool. They let me go to her surgery, and I stayed there, and I flew on a commercial flight one day later overseas to pick up and do the rest of the tour. And it was just still very hard. I would come home, and I would spend time with Amy, and I would want to be with Amy. And just as she had this broken neck, she had moved to Sanford, where she lived only probably 10 or 15 minutes from where I lived. And the whole reason she ever moved there in the first place was to be close to me.
Yeah.
Just so we would be around, just because she definitely liked me a lot more than I liked her in the beginning.
Yeah.
And now she had her place there, and I would almost come home, and I would, run errands with her, or I would try and spend time with her, and she just like was in such a bad place because she felt like she'd lost what all she had, and she just didn't feel like herself at this point.
Yeah.
And just the more time went on, and I was on the road 5 or 6 days a week and doing appearances, and she was at home, and she just kind of moved there to be with me, and she felt like she didn't really have any friends, or now she didn't feel like herself, and now I'm back on the road, and it's like, not that we drifted apart or stopped loving each other, but there was a point during that time where it just became different, because she kind of pulled away from me just because she didn't feel like who she was, and then I was just on the road all the time, and I was kind of wrapped up into doing my stuff, because that's when I was the most successful that I've ever been, too.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, it was a huge temptation for me, which nobody really knows this story, this is the first time that it'll ever come out, is that this girl, Susie, that I had such a huge crush on before, had split up with this boyfriend, and he was gone, and she knew he was a loser. She regretted doing everything she did so bad. She all of a sudden got my number and called me out of the blue one day while I was on the road with Shannon. Told her, oh, I just want to see what's going on. Were you still with Amy? Oh, yeah, I just want to see, and it's just good to talk to you, and I'm so proud of you. You're doing so good. I told Shannon, that was odd. I said, that was Susie. And he's like, really? Wow, isn't that shocking that she's calling you, whatever. So then I start I remember as soon as I went home too, there's one thing I told Amy. I said, yeah, that girl Susie, you remember her? She just called me. She said, oh great. She said, that's great. She'd called. That's probably the last thing she wants to hear at this point she's at in her life. I was going. She said, well, you shouldn't talk to her anymore. I was going, oh, I mean, I don't have intentions to really, but she just called me. So
and did you had a friendship with Susie before? I mean, you knew who she knew you well enough to call.
No, I mean, I'd never talked to her since, I said, I told my friend it was a choice, kind of me or her. That's the girl I'm telling you about.
So that's the last time you had talked to her at that point?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's what it'd been years.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But she just realized, she's like, whoa, boy, did I screw up.
Yeah.
And then she'd called in, and I remember telling Amy that, and Amy's like, oh, great. Yeah, that's all I need.
Yep.
It's going, it's cool, believe me, don't worry.
Yeah.
You and me, we make a team. And then, a couple weeks passed, and she called again. And then, I would talk to her, and I think there was a part of me that felt, oh, this is pretty cool that, now this bitch really wants to talk to me now, after this one thing we went through. And then she called again, and, I'd speak to her here and there. I never called her, but I said, well, it's fine if you call and want to talk. And I remember I'd tell Amy when I talked to her, yeah, but she's real cool. I really don't have any interest in her. But then, this was bothering Amy, and I saw that it was bothering Amy. And this girl was, really persistent in pursuing me. And there was one time she said, well, I've been trying to get one of your books. This is right after her book came out. I've been trying to get one of your books, but I haven't been able to get one. I was just wondering if you have a copy, if I could get one, And I remember one time I was going to the airport, and I said, okay, well, if you want, I'll just stop by and meet you here, and I'll give you a copy of the book. And I actually stopped and met her and gave her a copy of the book. And she said, well, can we get together and, go out and do something sometime or whatever? I mean, or you just still up with Amy? And I was like that. And I was like, well, I don't know. I said, here's this. I said, me and Amy are kind of serious, and I just knew there was a part of me that was whoa, I'm kind of starting to be lured into something here, and I need to pull back.
Starting to grow into something very slowly that you didn't want it to.
Yeah, but then I got on that flight that night because it was a girl that I'd envisioned myself being with at one point in my life, and a girl that really had all my looks. And now Amy kind of, she was at home hurt, and I wasn't around her all the time, and she just kind of been something different than what she was.
She withdrew a little bit from.
A little bit maybe, yeah. But then I got on that plane and I flew, and it seemed like I was going to Rochester. And I remember sitting on that plane, and I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? I said, I got to stop this right now, because if I don't, then I'm really going to fuck up a good thing. I said, sure, Amy may be hurt or whatever. I said, but I got to stop this right now. So cold turkey, I told the girl, I said, look, I don't need to talk to you anymore. I got a girlfriend at home, and this is what it's all about, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Just being with you is just, sure, I'm not doing anything wrong now, but it could lead to doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And so imagine, how this story's going to work out already as we go ahead. But anyway, I'd stop that right there, and then this girl had still called me some after I told her not to call me anymore, that I shouldn't talk to her, and I ended up changing my number out of the whole thing. And then Amy had got back, and she was healthy again. She got back on TV, and I just remember after having that one point of where we were never had problems, but there was where we kind of lost that closeness just from being away from each other. And it wasn't that we really lost closeness; it was just that I was on the road so much, and she was at home.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? It was just that being separated.
Yeah.
And that's why we both made a point. We said we need to be together, because if we don't, then it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
And I remember when she came back, I was wrestling. I was sick. I'd actually had strep throat, and I wrestled a house show that was probably 4 hours away from the pay-per-view. The pay-per-view was Hershey. That was going to be her return to the wrestling ring. And I was sick that day, and I asked Shannon, I said, hey, man, I think we can make it and get to the show in time for Amy's match, and I'd like to. And he's like, all right, man. And I remember I drove like a fucking maniac all the way there, like 100 miles an hour. And I got there, and as soon as I got in, walked backstage, walked in through the curtain, her music hit right when I walked in front of the monitor. Her music hit, and I thought I was going to miss it because traffic was bad, construction was bad. Her music hit, she went and wrestled, she messed up her teeth that night, but I went up to grill and she walked through, and just when she saw me, just knowing that I was sick and that I wasn't going to be there, and it was her first match back, she was already so emotional just from having that and being hurt, and she saw me and just broke into tears, and I did too. I just remember we left, and she was like, tell everybody thanks for the match, and we just walked outside, and I just remember holding her hand and walking outside the building, and we were just both so, to me, that was like, this is the girl that I should be with at that time.
Yeah. Because
there were so many things that said it's right, to be here.
Yep.
And we both definitely felt like that. And then we ended up coming. I came to Raw because I stressed it. We'd both asked Vince, and we did that. And how that happens just by accident. There was the thing where Amy did fire up, and it kind of did bad for both of us. Yep. But whatever, we said fuck it. We're a team. If one of us does bad, we both do bad, and we'll work out this together. And we did. We ended up doing the whole thing. Kane storyline. During that whole time with Kane, we were back on the road. There was we had a dog. I've never been a big pet lover, but now since I'm so in love with Amy, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt where I may have questioned this before, I'd been building my house and she'd been helping me. I said, look, come on, get rid of your stuff, move in, let's do this, let's make this a serious deal. We had a dog together. She'd really turned me on to dogs, and we actually lost our dog in a real bad accident and even brought us together close. During that whole time with Kane, just like it was perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? While we were on the road. And then I get hurt and I'm going home. So the first couple months of that, she was just real sad because she was like traveling along. She didn't want to travel with anybody. Then she traveled with some of the girls, but she was just so different from them because our relationship had been just grown, just like being best friends and doing whatever for each other, but just literally being best friends, and just like knowing that we're there for each other. So as time goes on, I'm at home, and there's a part of me at home where I'd kind of remove myself from the business because I'd just been so about the business, and I just started enjoying things at home. And I was like fixing up my house, and I was thinking about, wow, it would be cool to be at home and be married or have kids or have a bunch of animals or do whatever, but live like a normal
like
home.
Jeff.
No, actually be at home and live a normal life.
Yes.
Normal. Normal is the key word there.
Yes.
But nothing against
no
Jeff.
10 dogs.
No slight.
Yeah.
But anyway, that went down. And then there was a point where she'd stopped riding with the girls and she rode by herself again for a while. And she was just like real sad, and she liked being at home and hanging out. And I remember with the weekend right before this. Well, actually, no, I'll take it back. It was during this. There was a point where she said, "Well, I'm not really riding with anybody." She said, Adam's not riding with anybody, so he's going to join me. And I was like, "Okay, cool, that's cool."
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
how
like
could you
somebody
possibly suspect?
Yeah, it's just like with having your brother there.
Mm-hmm.
So they rode a couple weeks, and I remember there was a point like the first time I really, anything went on, I guess, was towards early in December. But
of 2004, just.
Of 2004, yes.
Yeah.
But the Thanksgiving weekend, right there around Thanksgiving, I remember Amy, we went out, we were wanting a hot tub, and she actually went out and paid $12,000 cash for a hot tub. She said, well, let's go ahead and get this. She said, we're going to be here for the rest of our lives, so, let's go ahead and get this. I mean, so that's definitely a sign,
Yeah.
that's what's in her
She
mind.
could have easily not said that, and it wouldn't have been suspicious. So, why, she offered that up. That was a clear sign of commitment.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, there was, and she would say it herself, like,
Yep.
the spot she ended up getting into, she has no idea,
Yeah.
how it happened.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess what happened was Adam came to her, and he'd just been married 2 or 3 months earlier, and he just had all these problems, and a lot of them stem from himself, and maybe he shouldn't have been married. But then he starts really, confining all his problems in her, and the ironic thing about this is like she started spinning off about how great our relationship was. Well, Matt would never do that to me, or I'd never do that to him, and this is great, da, 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 da. But then there was a point in there where I think Adam, when confining with her, like, did something different that she didn't even think she likes or didn't know she likes, and was very, like, treat her very girly or very ladylike. I think that's what the thing was, which is not like anything I didn't do, and we never had any problems, but it was like a different approach and something we didn't really have in our relationship necessarily, I think is what it was.
Because you guys started off as pals to a degree,
Yeah.
and it grew into something a lot more quickly. Yeah.
And what his intentions were, I could say I don't know, but it's just hard to suspect that there weren't intentions.
Yeah.
Especially with this.
Yeah.
And, the whole deal was, it's just like being away, that road, that separation, it's very easy to become disconnected with somebody. And even though we'd come home and everything would be good, but it was almost like, I really feel, just like the more I've looked into the situation, it's just like she was kind of intrigued or just had a weird curiosity about something that she didn't know that she even liked or had been interested in.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think once it started, then he continued the pressure.
And he kind of saw it happening and maybe fed it.
But what was odd is just like she had to be living 2 lives, because we'd come home and everything would be absolutely great, and there was never any kind of change.
Wow.
But I guess there was this kind of, and it's really like people think of like it's just a physical deal, and really it wasn't a physical deal. It was a mental deal more than anything else. But in some ways, a mental deal is worse than a physical deal.
Yeah.
As you know what I'm saying. But then there comes a time where I was going to her surgery in Birmingham where she got hurt, and I really felt like the small amount of physical interaction they had, which is not as great as people think, but it was right before that.
Yeah.
And it was like that weekend that she tears her ACL and everything that I did in my knee. And I really feel like, you talked about religion earlier, like I'm not a religious zealot, you know what I mean? But I believe in God, and I believe in things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
And I definitely believe in a higher power, and I just think there was a point where she was supposed to be sent home to like try and get her head screwed on straight.
Keep things from getting even worse than it was.
Than what happened.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was driving down to her surgery that day, and just to give you an example of what kind of boyfriend I was, and once again, ironically enough, I'll back this up, that whole girly aspect or whatever, or spoiling a girl, I think is how Adam likes to describe it, was something that whenever she'd get hurt with surgery or Christmas, like we'd had real good, like I'd had flowers, when she came home from being hurt, from Puerto Rico, I had flowers and I had wine and I had a gift and a card for her, and just things that I hadn't done because I was raised with such a hard dad, but things that while I was at home started thinking about more of a family life. And it's funny because like even if that's something that she was interested in that she didn't know, like I was already becoming that at this point. and especially at the Valentine's Day, you know, which was getting right towards the end before I found this out, which is really sad looking back in retrospect.
The timing of it, yeah.
And you know, we were driving down that night, or I was. She flew and actually drove her to the airport, which was an hour out of the way. I was going to make an 8-hour drive to Birmingham because it was the only way I could work out my schedule. I couldn't fly and get back in time to go to appearances my next day after that. So I actually drove an hour out of the way to Raleigh to drop her off at the airport, make sure she got there safe. And then I started that 8-hour drive, and once I got about 2 or 3 hours into the drive, she'd actually called and said she'd forgot her MRIs. And like they couldn't do her surgery without her MRI, so I had to turn around and drive 2 hours back home and then make the whole 8-hour drive again. So I literally drove for, I drove for like 13 hours that day.
Yeah.
And while I was, during the course of this drive, I got a phone call, and it was, I'd called a lot of people on the road just kind of burning up time, and I called Adam actually, because I actually, oddly enough, it was a little suspicious, like I hadn't talked to him in a while. And I got a call from his home, and I just remember picking up the phone, like, hey boy, what's going on? Matt, this is Lisa. And it's just, his wife had found, you know, a text message.
Yeah.
You know, I text messages from him, and one from Amy to him just saying, I'm going to really miss seeing you on the road, love being with you.
Yeah.
You know, just really, really odd. And it just gave you that real weird feeling. And then I just remember calling her and asking her directly about it, and she absolutely confessed up to it. She said, yeah, I did leave that text message. I probably shouldn't have, or whatever. She said,
She was quick on her feet, basically, in retrospect.
Yeah.
She knew how to disarm you, at least, somewhat.
I guess, yeah. I mean, she was just like, well, you'll see as time goes on, but she was really searching for a way to get herself out of this.
Yeah.
Because she didn't know what to do. She said, yeah, I did do that. She said, we'll talk about it later, or whatever. You know, if you want to. She said, yeah, but it's no big deal, whatever. And then I remember talking to Adam about this. Hey, man, call me when you get a chance. And I said, man, what's up with this text message that Amy sent you? I said, did she send you one? He said, yeah, she just sent a text message just saying that, yeah, she's having surgery tomorrow and what time it is, and she's going to have it in Birmingham. But, you know, that's been my main heat with him, that just his dishonesty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that was the first time you ever brought it up to him, and you got a completely false answer from him.
Yeah.
He held back the real deal.
Yeah. And then, anyway, drove down there, went to the surgery, and was there. Well, actually, I picked her up in Atlanta at her mother's, and then we were going to drive over to Birmingham together. And I remember just getting in the car, and it was very awkward, very tense, because I was wanting to speak to her about this, and I was kind of wanting her to bring it up first, talk about it. Then eventually, halfway through, I said, hey, what's up with that text message? That makes me feel very awkward.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I said, why is Lisa calling me about that? She said, oh, I thought she was going to ask about this. She said, I did send that. She said, it was just kind of like as a friend thing. You know, I was just kind of, I was buzzed because I'd been taking those painkillers and drinking. And, you know, and she said, but really, she said, I probably did while I was on the road with him, because I was traveling with him those last couple of months, and I was spending actually more or as much time with him as I was you, and I probably, like, made a connection with him that I shouldn't have made. She said, but, you know, I shouldn't have done that. She said, but I think that'll be over now that I've had my, you know, that I'm having the surgery and I'm going to be at home. And it was like an answer you didn't want to hear, but at the same time, it kind of made you feel better, because
it felt honest.
Felt honest,
yeah.
and it really was honest to a degree, not all the way, but to a degree. And then, you know, we got there, went to the deal, and like she set up the next morning, she had her surgery, and I remember just like, you know, giving her a kiss and holding her hand, and she was going in, just very emotional, and she was just so upset. And part of it was like she was so upset because she knew there was a weird feeling within me that I felt awkward, and she knew that she needed me there the whole while to do this.
Yeah.
She had her surgery, it was fine. I sat with her that day, and everything seemed to be cool. I remember getting back on the road and driving home. But it was real sad. Later, once everything came back out, I looked at phone bills that day, and like her and Adam had talked for like three or 4 hours while I was driving that day, going through all that shit, which was brutal.
Yeah.
You know, and very shortly after I left, you know, back on the phone with them again. You know, which was very heartbreaking looking back in retrospect, which is the stuff that drives you temporarily insane.
Yeah.
And anyway, she'd had the surgery. She ends up coming back home. Things were okay, like for a week or so, and then like Valentine's Day came around, and it's like I bought her all this shit for Valentine's Day, and like she had a very limited amount of stuff for me, and that definitely threw a flag. And I just saw like on her one phone, she had a phone that was like in my package, and there was a call from Adam there. And I was like, why is this motherfucker calling you? Valentine's Day. I said, this is odd. I said, I don't want you speaking to him anymore. I said, this is very, very weird. I said, I don't know what's going on here. I said, I don't know what this weird deal is. She said, oh, okay, you know, you're right, I shouldn't, or whatever, da-da-da-da. And then we had a couple days where it was just very tense, and I knew something was wrong. And she admitted, she said, well, I just think there's a part of me, I'm just not sure what I'm feeling right now, and I think maybe I should go stay with my mom for a few days and try and clear my head or work things out. And then we actually got into a real big argument. She actually drove off for the day, and like it was a Friday of that week. She drove off for the day just like to go and think. And I remember I got on the phone and I'd called some people, and I remember calling Adam, and I said, hey man, you know, what's up with you and my girlfriend? What's going on? Something's very odd here.
Yeah.
I said, if she calls you, don't answer. And as a man and as a friend, do not call her. And he said, I won't, buddy. I'm sorry, buddy. And he buddied me a lot. Oh, buddy, I won't.
That can be scary when you hear that word.
And it's just like, all it took is some honesty.
Yeah.
Anywhere in this, and things could have been figured out or resolved.
Yeah.
So I just figured, dude, it's like, as a friend, I would still believe what he's saying at that point.
Yeah.
And what happened was Amy came home that night, and she did realize, she told me, she said, I've really been fucked up, and my head's not where it needs to be. She says, and I'm going to fix it, she said, and I'm sorry, I apologize. And I remember that night, we had one of the most passionate love-making sessions we've ever had.
Yeah.
Because she'd been gone all day, and I actually went out with some of my friends, and I drank, and I said, we'll come home, we'll talk about things. And we talked about things, and it was very, very passionate. It was.
And was she honest with you that as much as she could be that evening, or not very much?
No, just the thing she was saying. The thing she was saying was just that her head was messed up and not where it needed to be, but she was going to fix it.
So okay, so it felt honest to you, but it wasn't.
And something she told Adam is that she didn't need to be talking to him anymore.
Yeah.
Because she's fucked up. You know what I mean? Because really, like at this point, she's just like got feelings for two people. Yeah. So then we spend this weekend together, and like we have a really good weekend, and then there's a point where she had an appearance on Sunday, but then came back home Monday, and everything was very, very good, and it seemed like we were getting back on the right track. And then I happened to go pick up her other phone, which happened to be sitting there, and I checked the messages, where I've never done shit like that before.
Mm-hmm.
And I checked them, and Adam had just burned up her phone with messages, just saying, I just want you to know, I love you, and if you're going to be with Matt and not with me, I don't think I can live with myself, and just please call me.
These are text messages or voice?
Voice messages.
And you listened to them?
Yes.
Yep.
And like we'd had a great night, a very intimate night again together. I just like got up to get water, like in the middle of the night in the kitchen. I just saw her other phone there, and just so odd. I just remember just seeing the phone. It was like in a movie. I just looked at the phone, and it's just like you zoom into it, just going like. Actually, she hadn't been using that phone because that was her own phone. I'd like bought a phone and put it on my package, and that's what she used.
Yeah.
And this other phone, and I checked in these messages, and I just remember hearing them, just like, holy fuck, and I'm just like freaking out. And I just remember. Because the first thing I do is, and we had Sprint phones, and I forwarded them to my phone just because I don't want people to think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I forwarded them to my phone. I forwarded them to Shane too, who's one of my better friends. It's like, fucking listen to this. I don't know what's going on, but something is, and I'm getting ready to go to the bottom of it. Get to the bottom of it, and then I go in there and I ask Amy about this stuff, and she just breaks down crying and confesses to quite a bit of it, not quite all.
Yeah.
And then I'm irate, and I'm going. People don't say I love you when this isn't going on where. People don't say I love you without having sex, but that was denied, and even still to this point, like, I really don't think that's happened. It could have, but other stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just remember I was irate. I was throwing lamps and shit, and I just don't do that, dude. I don't get mad. And then I was like, get the fuck out of my house. And looking back in retrospect, I wish I would have handled it differently.
Really?
But I didn't.
Because some people would say, there's nothing you could do that wouldn't be justified at that point.
There isn't, really. But just looking back in retrospect, there's a lot of things in this whole thing because I've never been involved in anything like this. But, then she leaves and she's just upset and wanting to talk to me about things and like trying to explain. But, there's nothing to explain that can really justify at this point. And then she leaves to go to her mother's. And just looking back is just like, the thing that I hate is that she made a huge mistake by being weak in the first place and letting this happen without communicating with me. And then just like, she was guilty and she was like trying to get herself out of this without telling me and trying to just like kind of let this happen and then move back on and get here. Yeah. But she was just still pressured so much, all the time. And it's just, and then too, once again, she wasn't strong enough to avoid this pressure.
Yeah.
And then, anyway, she'd been asked to leave and just like, she was really afraid to talk to me because she just didn't want to say the wrong things for a certain amount of time. And then she'd left to go to her mother's, and then there would be times where a couple days later I tried to calm down and said, look, there's only a small window of salvageability for this stuff. If we're going to salvage something, we need to figure out and why did this happen. And she just didn't know. She said, if I knew it would be easy, but I don't. And I just almost look back like the thing with Susie, as I was saying earlier, where I saw that something could happen, but I was able to put on the brakes where she didn't.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's why I told that in the story.
Yeah.
It's a very similar situation.
Yes.
And then just for it to be one of my close friends, that's just like, that's just like having two knives put in your back.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And as far as your friends in World Wrestling Entertainment over the years, Edge is top 2, top 3 of every top 4. He was one of your closest friends. This isn't an acquaintance who you hung out with a little bit. This is somebody who you've said if you guys were not in wrestling but lived a block away from each other, you'd hang out a lot. These are the guys who you were identified with career-wise, but also on the road. One of your best friends. Yeah, there were, there's only a handful of guys, and he would be one of those guys that would be one of my closer friends. Yeah. And
it's just, I mean, it's just something you would never suspect, especially because you think he's like, just a good quality human being.
And you knew what he was like on the road. He had been married twice, and you knew, I mean...
Yeah, I did know that he had some relationship problems, but really the stuff that we never talked about before.
Yeah.
And as far as him being on the road, like, I really never saw that side of him, but I've heard things even, since then, and other things where, there could be problems there, from that side, just as far as relationship problems.
But you didn't know it at the time. You did not know he might be a high percentage candidate to maybe be messing around with.
No, I never thought it. Just out of respect for both of us, and considering how well I knew Amy, I would never. I mean, like, really, if I would have had to bet my life on that happening, I would have lost my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honest to God.
Yeah. So so go ahead. You start finding out more and more about what's going on. You investigate.
So anyway, I found out these messages, and I kind of get an idea of what has gone on, which I've kind of told you already. That's kind of how we got to where things were. So then, during the course of this week, and I actually, I'd called Adam right after I found this out, like after I'd been upset with Amy and told her to get the fuck out of my house. And I remember calling Adam, and I guess he was flying home, and I was like, you motherfucker, when I see you, I'm going to slap the fuck out of your mouth. He said, call me back. So I just heard your messages, just irate as I could be.
Yeah.
And then I remember getting a call back, just apologetic. I'm sorry, it's not too late. You guys can still work things out. You can still make it through this. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. And, buddy, I'm just so sorry. I want to fly up there and see you. I said, you do not want to fly up here and see me. I said, actually, I'll take that back. Please, fly up here and see me.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I said that.
Yeah.
And then he was just blah, 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 blah. And I said, by the way, if it makes you feel any better, I said, I've called your wife and left those messages on her machine. So, I know that he knew that had happened too. And he's just like, oh. So I'm just so sorry. He said, it's just not too late for you guys. It's just not too late for you guys. I just remember saying that over and over. But it's just like later I got copies of Amy's phone bill because I had her info with his phone. It's just like, he never stopped calling. It's not like he tried to stop this.
Even while he's telling you it's not too late for you guys. Like, he hangs up the phone and boom, calls her.
Sure, yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like, just absolutely, being dishonest with me. Saying one thing and meaning another.
Yeah.
And then there came a point where I talked to him a couple times over the course of those couple of days. And, I called them both, Amy, and I just said, look, I said, I don't really understand how this happened, but what you guys are doing is just like a drug. I said, it started off where I guess there was a little bit, and then like you're like, oh, I want a little bit more, and then it kept building and building and building. I said, now you guys are out of control. And I said, like, if you don't stop, you're just going to like kill yourselves. I said, this is going to just turn into a disaster. I said, if anybody's going to salvage their relationships here. And just like, I remember one of his big points, he was going, well, just let's, don't tell anybody. He says, we can fix this or whatever. And I was just especially being so angry in the beginning, I was very split on that and torn on that because, like, in a way, I didn't want to tell anybody. I wanted to kind of just go away and, like, let me and Amy try and work things out, but just because I still, love her so much.
Yeah.
And then there was another part of me who's like, you motherfuckers, you're not going to get away with this. You know what I mean? And I definitely wanted to tell my close friends so they would believe me, just because it was such an unbelievable episode.
Yeah.
And kind of as time went on, like, those couple days, like, I really would have not told many people, but the thing was, like, I talked to Adam too, and like I said, the same thing, drug reference, and don't do this, and let's try and salvage something if we're going to salvage it, whatever. And then, I said, you guys just shouldn't talk to each other. Let you try and figure out your relationship, and let us try and figure out our relationship. And he said, okay, maybe we shouldn't do that, maybe we shouldn't do that, or maybe we should do that, maybe we shouldn't talk or whatever. And there were just a couple days where they went without talking, but I know, like, he told Christian, which got back to Jericho, he's like, fuck it, my wife left, and she's upset when to Colorado, I'm going to call Amy. And it's just like, he said that he wasn't, and he didn't. He wasn't making an effort to correct anything.
Yeah.
Is where my big problem was. And that's the kind of things that really drove me over the edge. Mm-hmm. And then especially, like, when he wasn't making an effort, then that would be 20 more people I'd call, listen, this motherfucker, da-da-da-da, and I'll run into him again.
Yeah.
So now the story's just growing. And it's just, there was one point, too, which I guess the first thing, which looking back in retrospect was a mistake. But like, I just remember all the pictures in the house I had of me and Amy being so happy. I just everything just came down. It was sickening to look at.
Yeah.
Especially considering circumstances involved. And I just remember being at my website, and I told Kirby, I said, take those pictures down. And I didn't have intentions of doing this, but then people said, like, why is Amy's pictures down? Why is Amy's pictures down? And I was just like, well, if you don't know why they're down, I think you should ask her.
Yeah, I remember that.
And really, like, looking back in retrospect, shouldn't have did that. But it was just one of those things where when you're being lied to and dishonest, it's just like you're looking for anything to kind of leash out and vent.
Yeah.
And then the story started breaking out, and then, like, everybody was starting to know about it. And then, like, once the story did start spreading, like, the first thing I wanted people to know was, like, I had never did anything wrong with Amy. It's not like I was mean to her. I was great to her. Like, as good as she can get, really. I mean, like, as far as asking for a good relationship.
And you knew no one was going to contradict that. Nobody has. I mean,
no, it's impossible to.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, well, you can lie, but even no one's
Yeah,
to do that.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And and then that just led to things. And then there were other just incidents that would go on where you think like, me and Amy would have this good conversation, but then like, she really I just feel bad for her, and it's not like I'm just defending her now because she was the one I loved and Adam I didn't, but she at least has been sincere and very honest throughout the thing, where Adam was the one who was just always trying to backpedal and just say, you make up a lie after lie. He was very dishonest, just trying to cover his tracks. Like, dude, you've already done wrong. Everything's out. Let's go ahead and either be honest and figure this out or not. And especially with his wife, he was real bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then there would just be times where it seemed like Amy and I would have a couple good days as far as trying to talk about things, and then something would happen where his wife would tell me something he said to her, or vice versa, and there was just so much he said, she said in this mix, and then it would just really blow me up because I was really an emotional wreck during this.
Yeah.
And then once this stuff did get back to the office, there was a point where they said, look, we want you guys to figure this out, and they didn't want me to come to the Raleigh show because they were the TV, the Raw in Raleigh, because they were worried there was going to be a physical altercation. They said, so you guys figure this out, and this isn't our job. We don't have anything to do with this. They're on TV. We don't care.
Yep.
So you guys figure this out. So I was the one trying to be the bigger person again because nobody else was really stepping up, because Amy's thing is just I fight, man. When I get backed into a corner, I fight, or I don't sit there and wait for something to happen. I try and make something happen.
Yeah.
And even during this, they said, okay, well, you guys figure it out. And now I know it's starting to affect work. So I actually called her and said, look, before this Raleigh show, they don't want me to go. I said, let's get together, all three of us, and fucking sit down and talk about this. Everybody's going to be in there, which nobody really knew about this either. That's the only time I'd been in his presence, well, the Fayetteville House show.
Okay.
We actually all sat down before that Raleigh TV event that morning and sat down and said, what are we going to do here? In a hotel room.
Wow. Just you three?
Just us three.
Wow.
And it was me on one side, Amy in the middle, and him on the other side. And
just put a time frame on it. How many days had gone by or weeks since you first confirmed on those
probably
phone
2
messages?
weeks. 2 weeks.
So you're still pretty heated, but you've
very heated.
You've had a little time to cool off, but then also a number of reasons to be upset again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There was just reasons. There kept being reasons to be upset again over this, and it's just basically the whole principle of that meeting. The whole reason we were going to have it was just to figure out how are we going to address this situation, and now it's fucking work up.
Yeah.
And we sat down there, and it's pretty general. I said, okay, well, I could go to SmackDown, or and my thing was I said, Adam, really? I said, if Amy and I are going to try and work things out, which she has expressed that, and I know she's got these feelings with you, I really think you should go to SmackDown. You should volunteer to, and let us try and see if we are going to work things out. Because if I go there and we separate, then that's definitely it.
Yep.
And then he obviously didn't want to do that because he wanted to be wherever she was going to be, and it was just we talked about all the options, and whatever. I guess we could have done it on the phone. It was just very, very tense, and just sitting there, a lot of cold stares.
Well, I was going to say, was he being buddy-buddy with you, trying to be cool, or was he very cold and distant?
It was just very cold and distant on all behalves.
Yeah.
And, and just the big deal was, he's just, I know you don't want to hear this, and I don't know this happened, but I love her, and I can't stop.
You said that, or Ed said that?
No, he said that.
Adam said that, yeah.
But I love her, and I just can't stop. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I just remember just looking at her going.
Yeah. Well, at least he wasn't denying it anymore. I mean, at least you got some honesty out of him. He was being upfront with you about that, as bad as it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and I was just like, just look at this. I said, look at these three people sitting in this room. And I was like, how in the fuck did we get into this mess? This is absolutely absurd. And my thing I've said 5 zillion times, I said, I can't believe this is my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just over and over again.
Yeah.
But anyway, that happened. And then the bad thing was, they go to TV, and then I guess if management did talk to them about this meeting, it's just I became the one because I was off TV at this time, and I was shunned though, because they were like, this is a problem, you guys figure it out yourself, and they asked me not to come because they're worried about a physical problem at the building, just because, I was still in the right in the scenario, especially from a moral aspect.
Yeah.
I understand for a business aspect, he was the one on TV, but if they would have took us there in Raleigh and sat down with us and some management and talked about things, they would have saw that we could have worked through things at this time, and I really think that was a big mistake of theirs.
Yeah.
So then anyway, then you've got a couple weeks going on, and there's times where Amy's in Atlanta, and then Adam tells his wife he's going to Phoenix for an appearance a day early, and then he really goes to Atlanta, and then she busts him, and then Amy was trying to tell me that, but he wouldn't let her tell me that because he knew that if I knew, then I would tell his wife again. It was just
And was Amy telling Adam, stay away, I want to be done with this, or was she so confused?
No, the biggest thing was because I was so unstable. If I would get mad at her because of something she did, then she would talk to him because they were the two guilty parties in it, and that was the only person she could talk to.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why I'm saying, even looking back in retrospect, if I had have been able to, but you just can't. If I could have been able to keep
that's asking a lot.
You know, yeah, that's asking a lot.
Yeah.
It's pretty unrealistic. If I could have kept my cool the whole while, it would have been an easier situation. But it's just like, once again, I've never been in any of that before.
Yeah.
You know, and then like once I find out the stuff, like he's just being dishonest, and it's just digging deeper and deeper, then just my hatred and disdain towards him is growing larger and larger.
Yeah. And you still care for him, as upset as you are.
Yeah,
and you know
absolutely.
he's messing with her and driving her crazy.
Yeah.
And as
I mean,
mixed as
you
you're
know,
feeling.
dude, I mean, like, love, it'd be nice if love was like a switch, like
Yeah.
a light switch where you can go on, off, but
Yeah.
it's far from the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On both our instances.
Yeah.
And then there came a time where there was the Fayetteville House Show. And I'd actually been in a book from them, but nobody had ever said never come there, because I was just like the one that was kind of like shunned. Just like in this situation, I was off TV and I was the one that they weren't communicating with. Adam, yeah, sure, higher on the totem pole than me, doing stuff on TV. Let's understand from a business aspect, but that still doesn't make it right the way the situation was handled.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Fayetteville House Show, I stopped by there. I ate with some of my friends before that. I hung out with some of the guys, and I just went in that day and I talked to everybody. Hey, just want to say hello to everybody. Da 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 da. And he just kind of was on his own that day. Just very uncomfortable with me being there, obviously. And that night when the show was over, my whole point of going there was just to prove, look, I can be in a building with this guy and coexist.
And not
it's
just
no problem.
spear him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's no problem, and we can pass it. We left there that night. I went and ate with some more of the guys. We went to Outback. Shannon was with me. We left there. We went to a club. We went to another club. We were there till like 1:30 in the morning or so, just hanging out, trying to have a good time and enjoy ourselves. We got on the road that night. It's actually the night that Shannon was in an accident where he just got in front of me and a car hit him head on. We were there till 4:30 or 5 in the morning, there all night. And lo and behold, the next day, and you know, I'm still talking with Amy every day at this point, obviously. And you know, Amy calls me the next day. She says, blah, blah, blah. And we're just talking general conversation, and you know, this, that, oh, really? I say, yeah, we did this last night, or we went here, or whatever. And she says, what about Adam's car? I was going, what about Adam's car? He said, I don't know if you heard this or not, but he got his tire slashed in his car van last night. I said, come on. I said, you're fucking with me, right? She said, no, really, he did. I said, come on, what? Why are you telling me this? Does it make me happy?
Yeah.
She said, no, really, he did. And I was going, you're kidding me. And I had no idea about it. And it was somewhere in Columbia, South Carolina, wherever he stayed there. And I was going, that's great. I said, well, that makes my day.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I told her.
Yeah.
And I mean, she can tell from talking to me, even when she told him, that it was obvious that I didn't know anything about it. I had no concept.
Yeah.
So I guess the deal was, just they thought because I was in Fayetteville, and this is the Carolinas where, once again, strong following. They thought that I automatically either did it, which it would have been physically impossible for me to do it on my own.
Yeah.
And then, or that I had somebody do it for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
Yeah.
And the thing that happens is that the office, I think that was the final straw, and like saying that there was going to be too much trouble and that I was going to end up being released. But lo and behold, I found out, going back to Joe and Susie, is right. Another thing where I was so upset after Amy had left, I called a couple of friends and I got Susie's number. And just out of spite, I had Susie come over, hung out with her a couple of days, and as soon as I could get a chance to become physical with Susie, I did.
Yeah.
Just for the fact that I wanted to tell Amy that, just being so outraged.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of like she was the person
Give her a taste.
I was going to talk to at that time. Yeah, just what I felt, and I knew it would hurt her
Yeah.
at the same time, just because I'd been hurt so bad, which was the right thing to do. No, but it's what I did.
Yeah.
And anyway, Susie's old boyfriend, Joe, who'd always hated me for a long time now because we'd been such good friends before, somehow had either heard about his tires being slashed, or because Joe is on drugs pretty bad and knows a bunch of real shady characters, could have possibly even done it himself. But I found out Joe actually contacted some people in the WWE and said he heard that Matt Hardy put a hit out on Adam Copeland. And that's where that information came back from. That couldn't happen. They ended up just vandalizing the car. And then for some reason, I was never asked about this and had absolutely zero, less than zero to do with it. And they ended up they assumed it was me, and then from hearing this piece of information, which I just found out a few days ago, that was the determining factor.
Wow. And what have you done with this information other than tell it here? Have you told anybody else? Like, I mean, have you told WWE? Did you talk to Amy about this? Did you talk?
Amy knows.
Yeah.
And Adam knows.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of remorse he has, but I know I think he does feel bad that I was released.
Yeah.
And he didn't think that should have happened.
Okay.
But I'm definitely going to make sure that I don't know. I haven't communicated with him obviously since then. But I'm definitely going to make sure. I only found this out a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely going to make sure some people know about it.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty strong.
That's heavy.
That's very heavy.
That's real heavy.
You know, just on this assumption.
And are you pretty sure, based on the information you have, that was truly the final straw with management, hearing about that, and that they just either believed it or felt that, well, that's a good way for us to be able to get Matt out of the situation and keep pushing Edge?
I think so. I think they just kind of wanted to get out of the situation too.
And that was whether it was true or not, they felt.
And then too, on top of this, they were upset that I made it such a public situation.
Yes, yes.
You know.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the bigger thing.
Yeah. I don't believe for a second, my personal opinion, I don't believe for a second that if you were higher on the totem pole and Edge was out with an injury and you were making money for them or on the verge of making money for them and you had made it public, that they would have still let you go.
Right.
Because it is about business with them primarily. They're in the wrestling business, and that's what they care about first and foremost. It's not about fairness. It's not about what's right.
Right.
If they can say, you know what, we've got edge, we've got momentum, let's do what's easier and better for business, then that's what they're going to do. But going public with it and talking as much about it with people who then talk to other people and spread the word, I mean, that was no question something they would have preferred not to have, because to them it's a personal situation that's a headache.
And it was like one of those things, I mean, it was just such a chain reaction. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Because you just tell a couple of people and it spreads, and then it spreads, and it's on the net, and then once that addressed, then if I do address it at all, and then other people address it, and then like a few people chant, and then they tell other people, more people chant, and then eventually we got a full-fledged garden thing.
Yeah.
You know, and who knows how long that lasts or whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you know, just especially with that, to shun me like that and kind of block me out of the whole scenario and not even ask me or try and speak with me on a level about like resolving the situation was very, very unfair.
And so it was Joe who called management and said
He called someone else that I know without using names, called
Sure.
someone else that had another called someone else to management.
Yeah, yeah. And made that accusation and
And there's absolutely no, I mean, it's like, it's just such an absurd thing. Like when I heard that, I actually laughed.
Yeah.
And then once I found out where it came from, wow, I was furious. I mean,
Yeah.
because I heard that there was some sort of assumption that there was a hit put on him that night. And I thought that was comical, laughable. Because one, I mean, just even looking back, rationally thinking, like, why would I even chance doing something on that? If I knew that you would obviously, you'd go to jail or whatever. I mean, it's not worth it. If I was going to do anything to him, I would have went and fought him at that Fayetteville House show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I was going to be that simple-minded, like, because I didn't want to lose my job out of the whole thing.
And you're on good terms with Amy. You're trying to fix things.
Yeah.
That's not going to fix things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just really, really shitty.
Yeah. Yeah. That's heavy.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that Edge's career, or that Edge will ever be looked at the same way because of the way the wrestling business works? If people can make money with Edge, they're going to set this aside? Or do you think that this stained him personally enough that this actually will haunt him overtly for the rest of his career?
I think it'll always be remembered overtly,
Yeah.
unless there was something he did to make things right
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form.
And is there something he can do to make it right
I don't
at
know.
this point?
I don't know.
Yeah. It's one of those things you'll know if it happens, but the
Yeah.
effort hasn't been there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think the chances are right now of things working out with you and Amy?
I really don't know.
Have things gotten better at all since the time when you first discovered this in that 2-week period, and now you've been talking to Amy regularly? Have things gotten better, or have things gotten worse, or kind of the same?
I think there would be periods where they got better. We actually had a real good period, like the week before I was actually released, where we spent a lot of time together, and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then like the release happened, and it was just, actually, she came up and she got some of her stuff from my house and spent a couple days there, and then actually went back to her place in Atlanta, and I went and spent a couple days with her. It was actually a pretty good, productive week. And then driving home that day, that Sunday, I stopped in Greenville, South Carolina, with one of my buddies, and actually worked out in his ring. It was just like I was having great workouts. I worked like 3 or 4 guys just in small matches, back to back to back. Just felt real good. And that's actually when I was informed. I got the call that day on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And then after that, that was pretty heavy. I just remember.
Were you shocked, or did you think that might come? Was that always in the back of your mind, or did you?
It was in
think,
the back of my mind.
Yeah, but the odds were less than 50% in your mind.
Yeah,
that
you know, really,
that they would
I
do
wouldn't
that.
have expected. I wouldn't think they would do it coming out of the situation.
Yeah.
But then again, nothing surprised me because
Yeah.
I've been around for a while.
Yeah.
And then I just remember that happening, and I remember talking to Amy after that. Jeff was the first person I spoke with. I actually called and left a message on her phone, and she called me when she landed, and like I told her, she was just floored by it. And she was just like, she just felt so bad. She said, I just want to be there with you. I'm just so sorry.
Yeah.
And da 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 da. And we had a couple of days after that where she did come, and we were together again for a few days, which was pretty good. And then just like all this anger started spewing out of me, just stemming from the release. And that's like when I wasn't working anymore. Then all these people were asking about doing radio interviews, this, that, and the other thing. And I started doing those just because now I'm at a point where it's like I have to take care of Matt and promote Matt.
Yep.
But then just speaking about the story on these radio interviews and just kind of bringing this stuff up again bothers her more because now it feels like I'm, trying to intentionally attack her again.
Yeah.
And not make it like a personal thing. And it's just like, it's so hard because like the thing was, I'm not trying to do that specifically to you, but it's just like I am trying to promote myself and tell my side of the story because now I have to worry about my future.
Yeah.
what's going on. So that created tension right there, and I'm sure any tension that created just kind of pushed her towards Adam.
Yeah. And do you think she is more towards Adam now in terms of thinking maybe he's who I want to be with as of this tape?
I don't know. I really don't think there's really much difference, because then it's almost a deal where I've came to a point where just I've dropped it. Just I got so sick of being just angry and just upset and full of disdain. It's just fuck, I'm just such a negative person. It's just I can't believe this is my life, and I can't believe I'm in this state because I'm the guy that is not that.
Yeah.
So I just said, fuck it, I'm just going to drop it. I'm just going to drop everything. I'm not going to talk trash about him. I'm just not really going to speak on her. The situation is the situation. It is what it is, and I'm past it.
Yeah.
And just with that being said, and kind of the dust settling, it's kind of improved our communication back and forth.
Because you've let some things go, at least for now.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if something if it turns out where you end up back with Amy, and you're 100% confident that you guys have a strong relationship now, and you're not worried about her being vulnerable around Adam, what are the odds that WWE calls up and says, you're back with Amy, the situation has settled down, it was totally unfortunate what happened, but we figured some things out, we've cleared the air, we want you back. Do you think there's a good possibility something like that could happen?
I don't know. I would like to think that would be possible, but I don't know. I really have no idea, and it's hard for me to even have an idea of what my standing is with him right now, because I have felt so shunned.
Yes.
Especially in this scenario.
See, what bothers me about this is I think that, it's a John Laurinaitis issue. It's a talent relations issue. The buck stops with him when it comes to that, and Vince McMahon has given him authority. Mm-hmm. But when you have Madison Square Garden chanting, and now every arena they go to, there's some level of a chant, some loud, some soft, but it's always there. It's big on the internet. You've lost your job over it. And now, rather than Vince McMahon, who runs the company, picking up the phone and addressing it to you personally and saying, Matt, here's why it was done, or I need to find out what's going on. There's almost even with you didn't start with him 6 months ago or a year ago. Right. You've been with him for a long time. There's a lot of history. I can't believe that Vince McMahon hasn't picked up the phone and said, this is a big enough deal that I should be talking to Matt, getting his side, or at least speaking to him about why a decision was made. What does that disappoint you, or do you think that Vince is under an impression that you did something so heinous, and that it's even, and in his mind he has proof that it's not even worth talking to you?
I honestly don't know, but I would.
I'm obviously asking for a guess, but
sure, I would like to think that that situation would be addressed instead of not addressing the situation, which was the issue. Because even if they were speculating on their own, they didn't want to let me know that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they didn't address this issue.
Because their official line was, creative had nothing for you. The creative department had nothing for you.
Well, it wasn't really that. It was just that we're going to look at some other guys.
Yeah.
There was never creative.
Well, the off record that I got was creative was not sure what to do with you.
But there were several ideas circulating around. Like I said, when I left, Stephanie and Vince were extremely high on me.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a bullshit answer.
And we're going to see where this goes over time. But as of this moment, they're hinting at doing a storyline with Lita and Edge. On the air, Lita and Edge crossing paths, making eye contact. What is that about, and how does that make you feel?
It's very awkward to watch, and I really don't know what's allowed as far as that goes. And I would imagine just the reason they've had them doing that is just to address the chants.
Yeah.
But it's.
You seem positive. You seem excited that these chants are happening because, on one hand, it shows the support for you, but there's also a downside.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the main reason why is just once you get rid of all the championships and money's made, whatever. I mean, really, the most simple, important thing to me is just what people think of you, really, and just what kind of mark you leave, and as far as the respect they have for you.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just very important that those people were very respectful and sympathetic towards my situation. And to me, just doing that just shows that they side with me, and it's very flattering.
A lot of them, though, don't know what Edge or Amy's side is. They don't know a lot of details. I mean, some of them do. The ones starting to chant.
They just heard the story that's out there, though.
The word going around.
Sure,
but a lot of them are chanting it because it seems rebellious. I mean, honestly, a lot of them are not. Sure. They're not. Matt's my best friend.
Oh, absolutely not. But I tell you what,
I
think more than just saying that. Matt's my favorite wrestler. I think there's a lot of people that really can relate to the situation.
Yeah.
Because so many people, my email address that I have, the Angelic Diablo at earthlink.net, that people have been emailing me at. It's just like my fan email address.
Yeah.
I've literally had probably 2,500 emails of people, guys and girls, that have been involved in the same situation. Says, dude, it feels for you, and I really hate you've gone through all this. And I think just people that see that, they're like, fuck, this is an injustice. That's really what I think it is, more than people that like me as a wrestler, that they just feel sympathetic because there's so many people that's been involved in that situation.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. And if you could go back and change one, I know there's things you would change.
Sure.
I mean, you
of things.
can't have your heart ripped out and be through these emotions and not do something you regret.
Right.
But you can you don't look back and go, that was ridiculous, I did it. But you would say, well, in retrospect, I might change it.
Absolutely.
What are a couple things you would change? What?
Oh, I mean, just like I said, I mean, just even when I was so irate with Amy that first morning, I would just say, what is this?
Yeah.
Don't leave. We're going to sit here and talk about this because what is this?
Yeah.
Just considering we had, so many years, so much water under the bridge,
Yeah.
Just try and, obviously she had lied to me, for a while,
Yeah.
but at least try and figure out where all this was coming from.
Yeah.
But it was, at that point, humanly impossible for me. But going back, I wish I could change that.
Yeah.
And going back, I wish I had have, like, told my closer friends and talked with them, but just been able to try and control my emotions whenever I kept getting hit with all these blows, because it's just all I would do was like vent or, have outbursts.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's easy to say it looking back. It's very hard to do at the time.
Yeah.
But it's just, those are the things I would just try to stay more level-headed and not as mad, but it's hard to say. It's hard to do that. It's
Yeah.
easy to say that, but it's very hard to do that.
Yeah, I don't think too many people are looking at this and saying Matt should have been rational during this. They may think you weren't perfect, but they're not expecting you to be
Right.
rational 100%. Can you make a good living and feel good about your career and be happy working non-WWE dates? Is this exciting for you? Are you determined to say, I'm going to actually make something better because of this unfortunate situation?
That's the only way I can look at it.
Yeah. And is it realistic, or are you fooling yourself? I mean, is there enough opportunity out there to really make things work?
I don't know. I mean, just like if you had someplace like a TNA
Yeah.
that's an upstart that has a possibility of doing something, I mean,
Yeah.
that motivates me to try and get there and give them everything within me.
Yes.
To try and be a leader there and,
Yeah.
and try and be somebody that helps them turn the corner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I fulfilled a lot of, signing that contract was fulfilling a dream. Winning the tag team championships was a dream. Having a singles championship was a dream. Just being successful on my own was a dream. And I fulfilled a lot of things. There's a lot of things, believe me, left that I would love to do.
Yeah.
And I definitely think there's a good chance I'll be in the WWE again one day.
Yeah.
I definitely believe that.
Yeah.
But also, if I'm not in the WWE doing other things, I think I have a lot to offer. Not only just as a talent and wrestler, I have a lot to offer because I've learned a lot. And I feel there's a lot of younger guys I can even give information to, and I'm all about that too. I mean, there's so many people that take from the business but never give back, and I'm very happy. It makes me happy to give back,
Yep.
and help others.
Yep.
Because that's one thing. So many people have helped me along the way, and I know that that's a very important part of the business, and a lot of people miss that.
And you're going to have an opportunity now, without any interference, for the most part, you don't know until you're there, on TNA, on national television, to do what you want creatively, and most likely be featured in a way where you have more creative control than ever.
Hopefully so.
You hope so. And I mean, that they could turn out to be a golden opportunity to develop something that actually someday might translate to WWE, assuming TNA doesn't get a big contract, big investor, and move to their level.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you never know. I mean, you just have to, it's just like anything else, man. I mean, you go through a lot of bad, turbulent things in life, and I mean, you just can't lay down and die. You just have to look at it the best way possible and say, well, this is this is the hand I've been dealt. What can I do with this? And if I can do this with it, I'm going to make the most out of it. So that's just kind of the situation I'm in. I mean, it's just all the way around just a really, really shitty situation. Because, like, I lose my dream job that I've worked for all this while, and it's indirectly because I was with my dream girl, and she kind of fucked me over. So it's just pretty impactful in a negative way.
And with 2 or 3 words that summarize your emotions at this moment regarding the last few months.
What are 2 or 3 words?
2 or 3 words that just pinpoint, summarize your state of mind right now. Bitter, hopeful, inspired, crushed, anything like that. Just a few words that kind of summarize.
Dismay. Just unbelievable. I don't know. It's just you really can't put it in 2 or 3 words, man.
Yeah.
There's just so much.
Yeah.
It's just that my range of emotion is just I've hit like every bad emotion there is. You know, in that range of bad emotions. I don't think there's 2 or 3 words you can put it in. Just sitting here talking about it, we've put in at 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just really hard to. It's just.
Can you trust ever again?
I think you have to be able to. I mean, if you can't, then you'll just be miserable.
Yeah.
You could probably do things different. It's just terrible that. Believe me, I just know in my heart too. Like, she made a huge mistake, and even if she doesn't realize it now, wherever she ends up going, she will one day.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I really. That's the thing I hate most about the whole situation, because I like being very secure and very sure about where I'm headed.
Have predictability.
Yeah, that I know what's going on. You know, I've got a lot of security in my future, and just everything is kind of there, and I know what I'm dealing with. And now I'm in a situation where I don't know what I'm dealing with. Like my personal life, I don't really know where I'm going to end up, and even my professional life, I don't know where I'm going to end up. So it's a very odd situation.
And 2 or 3 sentences then, where do you want to be in a year? Who do you want to be with? What state of mind do you want to be in?
There's no way I can even answer that.
I mean, do you want to be with Amy in a year and have everything be good, or are you not even sure? There's too many variables.
It's really hard to be sure about that.
Yeah.
It is, because I mean, what if things, you know, we decide to work things out and then we work back together, but then just things are different. I mean, there's so many variables that you can't really account for.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just I hate being in limbo like this
Yeah.
is, and it's really I'm in the ultimate limbo.
Yeah, professionally and personally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we'll see.